Good evening. I'd like to call to order City of Murfreesboro Planning Commission, July 13th, 2020. Also, if I may, before we start, would like to move item 4A to the second agenda item, if I may. Get a motion for that to be moved. Elections of the chair and vice chair for 2022-2023. Move that item to the first item on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a proper second, so we'll do that. And if we could, I will listen to a motion or names for the election of vice chair first, of chair first, and then vice chair second. Any nominees from the floor?
Do we need to vote on the motion first?
Motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Now, nominees for chair. We'll do chair first. All right. Yep. Nominees for chair from the floor.
I'd like to nominate Kathy.
Kathy Jones. Anyone else? We'll close nominations. We'll go ahead and vote as we go, so I will entertain a motion. Kathy Jones as chair.
So moved.
Second.
Sign of voting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Ms. Kathy Jones will be the chair of the City of Murfreesboro Planning Commission for 2022 and the 2023. Vice chair, we'll open the floor up for nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Ken Halliburton for vice chair.
Ken Halliburton. Anyone else? Any other nominations? We'll close the nomination and have a vote, a motion for Ken Halliburton to be vice chair.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Everything passes. City of Murfreesboro Planning Commission chairperson will be Kathy Jones for the 2022-2023 year, and the vice chair will be Ken Halliburton. Thank you. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Chairperson Jones.
Thank you. Y'all want me to move down there? You get her. Thank you, Carolyn.
Back in the hot seat.
Well, good evening, everyone. All right. So thank you, Mr. McKnight, and we will go ahead, and he did call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum present tonight. Our second item that we will do tonight is to approve the minutes of the June 1st, 2022 and June 15th, 2022 Planning Commission meetings. Any additions, corrections, changes? And if not, we'll have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 1 and June 15.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And next will be item 4B. We have a mandatory referral to consider the abandonment of a portion of a raw water line easement located on property along DeJarnett Lane and Osborne Lane. Huddleston Steel Engineering is the applicant. Good evening, Ms. Kerr.
It was open before. Let's see. There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair Jones, members of Planning Commission. This easement abandonment request is from Huddleston Steel Engineering, Inc. for Joe Swanson, Jr. The subject property is located along the north side of DeJarnett Lane and east of Memorial Boulevard. The Planning Commission is being asked to consider abandoning a portion of an existing raw water line easement on property that is owned by the Swansons. This portion of existing raw water line easement is shown in the gray highlighted area in your agenda package on the map. This raw water line easement, among others, was purchased in 1942 for the raw water line that was conveyed untreated water from the current intake just upstream of the Walter Hill Dam to the old water treatment plant located where the Discovery Center is now located on Southeast Broad. At the November-December 2014 Water Resources Board meeting, it was approved to abandon a section of this easement from the north between Compton Road and 2902 Madison Avenue. Portions of this easement were in the rear of the majority of the properties between Compton and Madison Avenue, and in some cases, it appears that some houses and/or garages were built over the easement. The Water Resources Department recognized that it was not possible to relocate the easement and find one continuous route that would not require relocating outbuildings or above-ground pools, clearing of large, dense trees, and acquiring additional easement from adjacent property owners. With this request, staff is requesting to abandon the portion of the Swanson property also shown on in the blue shaded area on the map in your agenda. And that's going to be between Osborne Lane and DeJarnette Lane. The Murfreesboro Water Resources Board met on June 28, 2022, and the board voted to recommend approval of this abandonment to Planning Commission and City Council. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council subject to the following conditions. The applicant must provide the City Legal Department with all the necessary documents, including any needed legal descriptions and exhibits required to prepare and record the legal instruments. The legal instrument will be subject to the final review and approval of the City Legal Department. Also, the applicant will be responsible for recording the legal instruments, including paying any recording fees. If approved by the City Council, then the mayor will be authorized to sign the necessary documents to convey the city's interest back to the owners. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions on this item? And this will just be an item that we will vote a recommendation for City Council. No public hearing. Questions? None. Okay. We're ready for a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the abandonment, subject to all staff comments.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next, item C. We have another mandatory referral. This is to consider the dedication of electric easements on city-owned property located along Joe B. Jackson Parkway and Vapor Trail. City of Murfreesboro Legal Department is the applicant. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Chair Jones. Thank you. Yes, this mandatory referral is at the request of Middle Tennessee Electric for 2 easements over city-owned properties for new and existing underground and overhead lines along the north side of Joe B. Jackson Parkway. One is at 711 Joe B. Jackson, which you can see on the screen before you now in the red hatched area. The other is at 3397 Vapor Trail, which is the one shown on this slide. Establishing these easements will not create any additional burden to the city's properties, and staff requests that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council that they be granted. I'm here for any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hankins before we? Okay. Ready for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next we will move on to our public hearings. 5 public hearings tonight. We will start out with an annexation petition and plan of services, a request for service as an outside the city sewer customer for approximately 1 acre located at 3905 Ashley Drive. Casey Nunley is the owner. Good evening, Mr. Blomley. How are you?
I'm good, Madam Chair, and hope the Planning Commission is doing well this evening. I'll be presenting this item and the next item for Ms. Brush, who's on vacation today. This annexation request actually comes to us. The true intention of the request is for service as an outside the city sewer customer. You'll recall we presented this item to you at our June 15th day meeting. This is a 1-acre single-family residential lot in the unincorporated county. It contains a single-family residence. Ms. Nunley contacted us several months ago about her failing septic tank, and there's some documentation in the agenda materials from Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, as well as the septic service, regarding the failure of her septic tank. The septic contractor indicates that that basically reestablishing a septic tank on that property is a lost cause because of the drainage on the property. From staff standpoint, we evaluated this and viewed it as a good exception to our general, I don't want to say prohibition, but our general ceasing several years ago of approving outside the city sewer customers because of the public health, safety, and welfare benefits of connecting this property to sanitary sewer because of the failing septic tank. At the June 15th meeting, the Planning Commission voted to schedule a public hearing for annexation, and at that meeting, of course, we informed the Planning Commission that after the public hearing tonight on annexation, you have several options at your disposal. You can either recommend approval of the annexation, or you can still vote to serve the property as an outside the city sewer customer if you wish. The plan of services that we conducted is contained in your agenda materials. Several issues were identified with the annexation of this property. For one, our solid waste department indicated that they would not provide solid waste service to the property until the Magnolia Grove subdivision, which you can see some of the future roads roughed into our GIS system there: Audrey Page Lane, Hahn Drive, Ray Drive. That section of Magnolia Grove is still under construction. So in order to serve this property prior to the completion of that section of Magnolia Grove, our rolling services would have to travel a very circuitous route in order to serve that property. And our solid waste department has determined that is not feasible for them to travel that distance to serve one home. The Murfreesboro Fire and Rescue Department also indicated that until Magnolia Grove is constructed down to Jurgen Road, there is an insufficient water supply to provide the house with the customary ISO Class 1 fire protection service. They still would be able to receive some amount of fire protection, but it would not be at the level that we normally provide to properties within the city limits. In addition, MFRD would initially need the assistance of the Rutherford County Fire and Rescue Department regarding water availability for the property because of the lack of a fire hydrant in proximity to that property until Magnolia Grove develops down to Jurgen Road. The adopted Murfreesboro 2035 comprehensive land use map shows the property as being suburban residential, so basically what it's being used for right now. However, in the proposed update to the future land use map, it is outside of the city's service infill line. When we were drafting the update to the future land use map, we saw Jurgen Road in this area as kind of the boundary to the area that we as staff felt was appropriate to annex within the planning horizon of the 2035 plan, which is the next 13 years. So in closing, staff recommends approving the property for outside the city sewer customer service and not for annexation for the following reasons. Obviously, because the septic tank has failed and it does not appear that it is able to be repaired and put back into service. The Murfreesboro Fire and Rescue Department, for the time being, would not be able to provide its customary ISO Class 1 service to the property. And for the time being, the Solid Waste Department would not be able to provide service to the subject property. And also because the subject property is located outside of our proposed service infill line, which, as you know, has not been adopted yet, but we are attempting to use our future land use map, our proposed future land use map update as best available information. But I want to make it clear that that has not been adopted yet. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions. We do need to conduct a public hearing regarding the annexation and plan of services. And Ms. Nunley is here if you have any questions for her as the applicant or regarding the condition of her septic tank.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Blomley before we have a public hearing?
Really quick, and I believe this was mentioned at the June 15th meeting, but the cost to connect to the sewer will be solely placed on Ms. Nunley. That would not be a cost associated.
That's correct. There will be no cost to the city to extend sewer to serve her property. She will need to work with the developer of Magnolia Grove because that's where sewer will be coming from the north from Magnolia Grove. It will be her responsibility to acquire easements, which would then be dedicated to the city upon construction of the sanitary sewer line, and it would be at her expense to construct the sanitary sewer line to serve her property. So that would be how she works that out with the developer of Magnolia Grove would be between her and him. But what this action would do tonight and subsequent approval by the city council would pave the way for her to be able to do that.
Thank you.
All right, I wasn't here on June the 15th, and this may have been answered then. If there wasn't sewage coming down that direction from that neighborhood, what would be her alternative at that point? Like, what could she have done if we didn't have a neighborhood being built right there?
That I don't know what the answer is. Her septic contractor said that the septic tank was basically in a state where it could not be repaired and put back into service.
Since she wasn't here, the little background, she is not in the house. It is not habitable right now.
Okay.
Yeah, she has been not able to live in her home since early January, I believe. So she is just attempting to be able to get back to a point where she can live in the home that she purchased.
I'm going to abstain just because I didn't hear all the discussion y'all made, so that way y'all can take the passive discussion.
You certainly can. Happy any other questions to be answered if you need them to, but however you prefer. So we will have a public hearing on this item tonight. For all the public hearings that we have tonight, we'll ask that anyone that wants to speak come forward to the podium, state your name and your address, and then make your comments directly to the Planning Commission for the items you would like to speak on. And please, as I said, make comments and questions to the Planning Commission, not to other members of the audience or developers or staff, anything like that. We'll make note of any questions you have, and all questions are answered at the end of the public hearing so that we can get all the questions down and then answer everything after the public hearing is closed. So with that being said, and I did not say, when you come to the podium to speak, you do have 3 minutes to make your comments to the Planning Commission. So please, looks like we have a lot of people here tonight that are going to speak on some items. So make sure you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less so we have time for everybody to speak tonight. So with that, we will open the public hearing on this first item and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak regarding this matter. Anybody? Okay. We'll close the public hearing. And again, comments or questions from the Planning Commission and or any further clarification or discussions?
So I think the biggest issue we had before was annexing the property and not knowing whether the sewer was going to be able to come in. But now that we're not annexing the property, I don't think we have a real issue anymore. It's just outside the water service,
Yeah.
or outside the city service then.
And I think the
Is that,
issue is the annexation is not
yeah.
really, it's just not feasible, correct? Doesn't make sense at this point, and that she does at least have an option to try to get the sewer service as long as we can approve her for an outside the city customer. So, any other comments, questions, thoughts regarding that? And we'll just need a motion for our recommendation to the city council.
Nothing else, I make a motion that we approve this for outside the city sewer service.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
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 Abstain.
One abstention. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you and good luck. Our next item, we have a zoning application for approximately 19.5 acres to be rezoned from RS-15 to RS-8, and approximately 6 acres to be rezoned from RS-15 to CF, located along Franklin Road. Beazer Homes is the applicant. Mr. Blomley, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next public hearing tonight is very similar to one that you saw in 2021. You'll recall that in 2021, the Melton property right here came before you for rezoning to CF along the Franklin Road frontage and RS8 for the balance, single-family residential district, minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet. Now, the Smith property, which is right next door to the Melton property, and when I tell you that Mr. McKnight and I have been in a number of meetings over the last 3 or 4 years on both of these properties, that would be an understatement. Seeing these come to you means that it will clear a lot of time in the future on me and Mr. McKnight's schedules. We have met a lot about these properties. Similarly to the Melton property, here on the Smith property, they are requesting CF, commercial fringe, along the frontage, and RS8 for the balance of the property. So that's 19.5 acres of RS8 and a total of 6 acres of CF. The proposed CF zoning is a little bit deeper than the CF zoning on the Melton property, and the primary reason for that is you'll notice that the Victory Station development to the east has an existing drive, like a backage road that serves the commercial parcels on the front. And so the depth was made coincident with the depth of that service road so that it could be continued on this property. And you'll see that there are actually 2 parcels that are involved in this request. There is the Smith property and the Zachariah property. And the Zachariah property is also requested for CF along the frontage, and this property here directly to the east is an existing eye doctor. But at this point, Mr. Zachariah was not ready to make a zoning request for the balance of his property. So the rest of his property, which is in the pink color, pinkish, I guess, is proposed to remain RS-15 for the time being. Now, Mr. Zachariah may be coming back before the Planning Commission at some point in the future for rezoning for the balance of his property, but he was undetermined at this point about what he wanted to request, but I suspect we'll be seeing him back before you soon. The surrounding land uses are primarily single-family residential to the north. You'll see the Blackman Oaks East and the Trafalgar Square subdivisions, which are zoned RS-12, and the Blackman Cove subdivision, which is about 8,000 square foot lots where Foundry Circle is over here to the northwest. Directly to the east of the subject property along Fortress Boulevard is an assisted living facility, as well as the on-the-run gas station and the eye doctor that I mentioned earlier. And across the street is the intersection with Rucker Lane, as well as the Publix and the new Toots. There is additional vacant commercial fringe zoning on the south side as well as a part of the same commercial subdivision with the Toots restaurant. The existing adopted future land use map shows all of that property to be recommended for the general commercial land use character. That was part of the adopted future land use map, the Murfreesboro 2035 plan. The landscape of commercial development has changed somewhat over the last number of years, and the depth of this commercial that's shown on here, the hundreds and hundreds of feet deep, is we feel a little bit doesn't really fit the existing commercial development model in 2022. So what we've done as part of our proposed future land use map update is to continue to show the frontage as general commercial, and to the rear we're proposing that for auto urban residential. And the RS8 zone is really the lowest density zoning classification that fits within the auto urban residential. And so both the zoning for the Melton property that was approved last year and this proposed zoning request are both consistent with that auto urban residential land use character. Staff is supportive of this zoning request to RS8 and CF for the following reasons. The RS8 zone only permits single-family detached lots of a minimum of 8,000 square feet and requires a minimum 75% masonry materials, brick, stone, or hardy board on each facade. Any future development proposal will include a road connection to Franklin Road across from Rucker Lane and along the north extending to Fortress Boulevard. The road connection to the Rucker intersection will provide a means of ingress, egress at an existing signalized intersection for both the existing and proposed residential uses to the north of Franklin Road. It will provide a fourth leg to that intersection. The portion of the property proposed for CF is consistent with the general commercial land use designation that is contained both within the adopted and the proposed future land use map. And the portion of the property for RS8 zoning, while it's not consistent with the adopted future land use map for general commercial, it is consistent with the auto urban general residential land use character recommended in the proposed update to the future land use map. And staff believes that it will provide as a good transition from the more intense commercial uses along both Fortress Boulevard and Franklin Road to the existing single-family residential detached subdivisions to the north. The Planning Commission will need to conduct a public hearing and then discuss this matter and then formulate a recommendation to the City Council. I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing, and I believe that Mr. Brian Grover with SEC is here representing Beezer Homes if you have any questions for him.
Mr. Blummer, I have a question about the offset in the commercial fringe versus the residential area. And I understand that the difference is for this potential road on the adjoining property. But so is that road coming from residential? Is that residential over there and going to be coming into the commercial portion, or is that also commercial?
So I think what we would envision would be something along these lines, with Rucker Lane being extended, there being a continuation of the backage road behind the eye doctor, and then also a backage road for these lots here as well, so that everybody could get back to the signalized intersection at Rucker.
And so the backage road behind the eye doctor, is currently that road off of the eye doctor property or on the eye doctor property?
It's off of the eye doctor property. It's on an access easement on the assisted living facility, and on that plat, it does say that it is that it is for the connection to the property to the west. So Back when the assisted living facility was developed, we made sure that there was that provision so that it could be extended over to this property upon development.
Okay, and so you prefer that would be extended into the commercial property, not into the adjoining, what potential, well, I know that's not up for today, but the pinkish property, but still, coming into the commercial versus potentially what might be north of that.
I think that's probably cleaner.
Okay, so you like the offset,
Yes, ma'am,
and you all requested that? Okay.
we did.
Okay. That was kind of my question on that. Anybody else have any other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay, thank you, Mr. Blumley. So we will open the public hearing on this zoning application and ask anybody that would like to speak on this item to come forward to the podium. And again, please state your name and address. So public hearing is now open. Anybody would like to come forward? We're going to save it all for one of these later on. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And do we have any other questions or comments or concerns from the Planning Commission on this item? Okay. And I guess we're ready for a motion.
Motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Item C, this is a zoning application for approximately 10.8 acres located at 2655 Wilkinson Pike to be rezoned from RS15, MU, GDO1 and GDO2 to PRD, GDO1 and GDO2. Toll Brothers at Gateway, and this Toll Brothers is the applicant. Good evening, Ms. Green. How are you?
Good evening, Chair Jones. I'm well, thank you. Good evening, Planning Commission. Our third public hearing this evening is for you to consider a rezoning application that's been filed with the Planning Department to rezone property that's shown on the map on the screen before you. This property, as you mentioned, is approximately 10.8 acres, and it's one parcel. This one parcel has two base zonings. One is mixed use, that's the MU on the map. The other is RS15, and that's single family residential district. The area that is zoned MU is also zoned GDO1, and the area that's zoned RS15 is zoned GDO2. The application is to rezone the properties from RS15 and MU to PRD. PRD stands for Planned Residential District. And as you know, a PRD application requires the preparation of a program book, and so a program book that's titled Toll Brothers at the Gateway Center has been included in your agenda materials for consideration. The application will keep these properties within the Gateway Design Overlay District. So even though there is the planned development application, future development would be subject to the process and high standards that we have in the Gateway Design Overlay District. So this one property, as I mentioned, is 10.77 acres. It is located north of the future Willow Oak Trail extension. At this time, Willow Oak Trail does not continue all the way to Medical Center Parkway, but that roadway is to be developed by the developer Hines, who's doing the adjacent Clary Park. And then it's also located south of Wilkinson Pike. And so this property currently has frontage and access to Wilkinson Pike, and will have future access to Willow Oak Trail. The plan phases development along Willow Oak Trail at a time when they expect the road to be finished. If for some reason that road is not completed by Hines, it would be the responsibility of this builder to complete that road. The Stones River Battlefield is to the northeast, and then you have some county subdivisions on the north side of Wilkinson Pike. Clary Park is a mixed-use development that's located to the west and south of the property. Immediately adjacent to this property is property that's the Villages of Murfreesboro, which is an assisted living facility. It also proposed and was approved for some independent living units, which haven't been constructed yet, but they have plans to do that at some point in the future. The Wilkinson Pike buffer is an area that's 100 feet deep, and it runs along the south side of Wilkinson Pike, essentially from Thompson Lane to the Chamber of Commerce. There are some areas of property, namely the single-family homes that are on the south side of Wilkinson Pike, that were not a part of that Wilkinson Pike buffer. Several years ago, there was an application for the previous owner of the properties to the west to remove that Wilkinson Pike buffer from their properties. In exchange, they were proposing to construct a landscape buffer and berm to compensate for any encroachments within that Wilkinson Pike buffer. That application did not include this property. This property we informally refer to as the Hale property, H-A-L-E, and that's because the owners are the Hale family, and they are different than the Gatton properties that were mostly surrounding this area. So the Wilkinson Pike buffer does apply to this property. You'll see later that their application is to ask you to consider something similar to what was approved for the Gatton properties, which are now Clary Park. The buffer is a minimum of 100 feet wide, and it does restrict how that 100 feet can be used and what can be stored in it or located in it. This plan, and the applicants will go into detail with the plan, does propose single-family attached, that's townhomes, and single-family detached, and that's detached homes that you may think of as uses. And within that 100 feet buffer, they would like an exception to encroach 20 feet within that buffer for the single-family homes, and that'll be an exhibit that we can see later. But I did want to mention it since I thought that some folks probably remember the discussion about the berm, and that did not include this Hale property. The property as it currently exists is zoned mixed-use district, and that mixed-use district was created in 2013. When the city created it, we also identified properties that we thought were good candidates for the mixed-use district. As you know, the mixed-use district does require that development be predominantly office or commercial or institutional, but a commercial type use. And then there is a limit to how much land can be used for multifamily purposes. Multifamily is the only residential use that is permitted in the mixed-use district. So when the applicants approached the planning department to discuss having a contract to purchase this property, they expressed a desire to construct townhomes and single-family homes, which would not be permitted in the mixed-use district. Single-family would be permitted in the RS-15. They were not interested in integrating any kind of commercial components in the plan, and so the driver of this plan development application is the fact that they don't want commercial, office, retail uses here, and they want to do strictly residential uses that would not be permitted in the underlying zoning district. Toll Brothers is a group that has a contractual interest in the property, and so they have a contract to purchase the property and thereby have authority to request a zoning change application, which you have before you. They held a neighborhood meeting on June 6th at the Embassy Suites, and there were several neighbors who came to speak regarding and ask questions regarding the proposed plan. As submitted, they're proposing 77 townhomes and 27 single-family detached homes. The single-family detached homes are proposed to be a horizontal property regime, so you don't have a lot that surrounds your property, but you purchase the structure itself and the surrounding land as common area. So the single family and the townhomes both would participate in the owners association and be subject to those rules. The details of the program book I'm going to ask the applicant's representative to go through. When we asked them to compare the development, the planning staff believe that the RSA Type 3 townhome most closely resembled the proposed development plan. And we have two types of townhomes in our zoning ordinance, a suburban style and an urban style. The suburban style of townhome is called a Type 2, and urban is Type 3. And so the planning department determined that this development would be most similar to an urban style development, and you may think of the townhomes behind the boulevard on Main Street. Those style of townhomes would be the style that you would see. One of the requirements of the urban style townhomes is that the finished floor elevation is at least 18 inches above the finished grade located adjacent to the front of the structure. And likely some of you recall conversations we've had with adjacent properties about raising the foundations. And so We shared some of the, I think some of the, what we discussed with the adjacent townhomes, something that had applied to them and wanted to make sure that they kind of had that input as well. And so they were willing to do the raised foundations, wrap around porches on what they have identified as highly visible lots. And then we also asked them to go back and look for an opportunity to create usable porches because the Gateway Design Overlay District and the urban style townhome both recommend usable porches. And so when you look at the plans, you'll see that there's some things that they have implemented. I mentioned that the plan is divided into 2 phases. The first phase would begin at Wilkinson Pike, and then it would come south. On Wilkinson Pike, as we know, it's a substandard street. It is on the city's major transportation plan for improvement. That I don't think that project is within the next 5 years. I generally look at the budgeting program that the city council has, and so we've asked the applicants to look at how they can manage traffic into their development onto Wilkinson Pike, and so Clary Hines is putting in a turn lane for their project. And with this project, they're proposing to extend that turn lane, so it's a continuous turn lane along the frontage of Clary Park and then along the frontage of this property so that you can get some of the turning vehicles out of the through lanes and let people pass. There's also, of course, some opportunities to address drainage concerns on the property and, of course, surrounding the property. Part of the plans for Wilkinson Pike are to upgrade the road from substandard road to one that meets city minimum standards, but also elements of the roadway plans were to help address some of the drainage concerns that exist or pre-exist the city annexing the property. And so since I don't have a definite time frame for when that work's going to be done, we did ask the design or the engineer to look at opportunities to address existing drainage conditions. Of course, our standards would not allow them to make the situation worse for surrounding properties, but if there's an opportunity to make it better, we want to try to identify those. And so Mr. Taylor with SEC was looking into ways to extend some pipes that are along Wilkinson Pike along this property to see if they can help offset that. And I think the SEC team would be able to speak to any questions you have about those drainage improvements. We did hear some concerns from some emergency responders about accessing these alley units, single-family, detached or attached. And part of their concern was being able to identify the units from the alleys. And so as a solution, the plan is committing to putting the addresses for the buildings both on the front of the building and on the alley. Because although, the front may be oriented toward a park, the way to get to the structure would be through the alley. So they're going to have those addresses on the back of the buildings. And then the single-family detached homes have added a man door adjacent to the garage in the back of those units. And that was to address some concerns, I think, from our fire department. As you know, oftentimes fire calls aren't just for fire, but for emergency service responses. So if you need some medical help, they're usually first on the scene. So if you look at those elevations, you'll see a door on the single-family detached, and that's that's why that's been added to accommodate those concerns. I know Mr. Lilliance is not here, but he always enjoys me going through the exceptions, so I'll do that now. To do a plan development, the plan is unique to the property, and there's an opportunity to design it to be creative, and so there may be exceptions that are needed. What the staff would like you to do is to consider the exceptions, see if they're reasonable, or if you believe that they should not be granted. This application has 6 exceptions. The first one, of course, is just a use exception because the mixed-use district would not allow single-family attached or detached, so townhomes or houses within it. And so just allowing that use would be an exception. The second is that single-family detached homes, so just your traditional single-family home, not connected on either side, is required to have 4 parking spaces outside the garage. So the driveway should accommodate 4 parking spaces, and garage spaces can't count toward the minimum. Now, that's different than townhomes because we wanted to encourage townhomes being added to garages. And so the zoning ordinance was updated to say that garage spaces could contribute, but that's not true for single family. So the exception here is to allow 2 parking spaces in the driveway, and then the 2 in the garage to count toward their minimum. And then when we did look at allowing garages to contribute to the minimum parking standards, we also set up some minimum dimensions for those garages. And so the 4th exception is a 3-inch reduction in the minimum width of a garage. So a 2-car garage in our zoning ordinance needs to be 19 feet 4 inches, and they're asking for it to be 19 feet 1 inch. The 5th exception has to do with the buffer that I think I maybe mentioned early on, the 100-foot wide buffer, and within 20 feet of that, they want to put the single-family detached homes. In that other 80 remaining feet, because they're asking to go within that buffer, they're proposing to construct a minimum 5-foot high berm planted with a mixture of evergreen trees and shrubs, canopy and understory trees. The landscape berm is not a requirement in our zoning ordinance. It's the buffer as it exists is basically a distance separation. So to continue what's been done adjacent to the property, they're proposing to do the berm as well. And then the sixth exception is to not put in a external commercial grade garbage compactor. Our zoning ordinance says that multifamily and townhomes that have 75 units or more need to install a compactor, and the solid waste management plan for this project is a private hauler similar to the city but not the city to provide those services. However, they don't want to put a compactor in because they think that takes away from their neighborhood, so to not put a compactor in would require an exception to that standard. The future land use map does both the existing and proposed. I've had a couple of these recently, which is kind of rare, but they both recommend that this property develop with an urban commercial character. This designation provides opportunities for residential mixed with commercial, retail, and office, typically with a vertical element of multiple uses in the same building. So what you might think, first, second floor commercial offices, and then residential above that. Because the plan does not include any kind of commercial office component, it, of course, would not comply with the future land use map, which does recommend that urban commercial land use category. Now, we have discussed the new future land use map amendment that is not adopted yet, but is being considered. Within that, we created a transition policy, what we've mentioned before. The proposed amendment to the future land use map proposes a new general policy to allow flexibility related to transitions between designated areas on the future land use map. The purpose of the transition policy is to give flexibility within or between property lines to allow land use policy to be shaped relative to a site's context as well as its designated property boundary. And so there's a list of 7 suggestions that you might want to consider when considering the future land use map as it relates to property where it might make sense to deviate from the map. And there are 2 that may or may not be applicable. I just kind of picked them out for you to consider. The 5th one is current land development patterns support the expansion or contraction of a specific land use boundary or land use change. So you may think that what happened in Clary Park changed it enough that continuing townhomes makes sense, and that's a call for the Planning Commission to make. And then the 7th one says, adjustments to the future land use map should generally consider possible improvements to quality of life issues, unique development opportunities, and or job creation that can improve economic opportunities in the city. So if you think this plan provides a unique quality of life that somebody may desire or unique development opportunities, then that may be reason to deviate from the land use map. So staff, of course, will request that you consider the exceptions proposed and the future land use map with the transition policy. The representative of the applicant, Mr. Grover, is going to go through the details of the plan, but before we invite him up, do you have any questions for me? I know I shared a lot of information this evening.
Any questions before we hear from the developer?
None for me.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Green.
Hello, thank you for having me here today. My name is Brian Grover of SEC. I am accompanied by Michael Burton from Toll Brothers, the client here for the application. I'm here to go through the plan, just to discuss some key aspects of it. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those for you. I'm just going to start this here. The Hale property, as I said before, it's approximately about 11 acres on the southern edge of Wilkinson Pike. The Hale family, who resided there before and has been vacant for about approximately 3 years now, there is an existing house and out structure on the parcel, but both of those would be removed upon the project moving forward. The site is currently zoned mixed use and RS15 with surrounding areas of the mixed use, as well as an existing PUD and residential properties within Rutherford County. Some site photos on the site. This is a picture looking into the site from the southern portion of the property, from the approximately about the Willow Oaks Trail area. Here's a picture of the existing home on site, as well as residents across the street, and the existing assisted living facility next door. This is a view of Wilkinson Pike looking west. This is key for the point of this roadway would be constructed to have the turn lanes continue from Clary Park as part of the roadway improvements for this development. The overall plan is proposing 104 dwelling units, 77 of which would be the attached townhomes, 27 would be the detached single family. The overall density of the site is approximately 9.66 units an acre. The site does provide ample open space in the form of approximately 2.6 acres. The all utilities will be underground for this development. The reason we are asking for this rezoning is the current mixed use doesn't allow for the attached or detached residential, which is a product our client wanted to bring to this rather than the multifamily complex that was allowed within the mixed use development. Within this 2.6 acres of open space, there are several amenities. I'll be going over those further in the presentation. You will notice that within this plan, the single-family detached is located on the north and south portions of the plan. Specifically, this was done to keep and maintain the townhomes within the central part of the development to help with that transition from the existing right-of-ways. Other aspects of the plan that have been implemented and focused on, one of them being a pedestrian-friendly walkability within the development. This was achieved through on-street parking and street trees to help slow down traffic, as well as raised crosswalks and sidewalks provided throughout the entire development. All streets within this development will be private. To help maintain the walkability of this, all units within this development are alley loaded. So all garages and vehicular traffic would be directed towards the rear of all units. The single family and the attached and detached single family, these will all be on the horizontal property regime and maintained by a third-party HOA. The proposed architecture, as Margaret was stating, the type 3 townhome, similar to the Boulevard townhomes. This plan is focused heavily on the architecture being consistent and very nice for the area. Sorry, lost my spot there. Similar to the brownstones, that brownstone look. The townhomes themselves will offer masonry construction, brickwork, so on and so forth. There will be a minimum like 2-foot offsets between the units, undulating roof lines. They will also be heavily landscaped around the base and rear, as well as sides. And as Margaret stated, we will have the raised foundations, 18 inches minimum, for these townhomes. Here's a elevation perspective of the townhomes. You can see the brickwork in this, as well as the proposed enhanced side elevations with the wraparound porches. If you look at your agenda, you'll see that within the books, any of those red dots noted within the book will include those enhanced side elevations. Here's a rear perspective of the townhomes. You'll notice that the brick continues to wrap around the back, and the rear includes the balconies as well, continuing these architectural components even to the rear of the buildings. Sorry. All these standards for the homes will help develop more of a continuous look throughout the entire site. And each home will be worked with the developer to make sure that we don't have any repetitive elevations going throughout the site as well. The single-family detached, as you can see on the plan here on the north and south portions of the plan, will follow the same architectural principles as the townhomes when it comes to the material, the brickstone, fiber cement board. These will be two-story homes, a minimum of 2,300 square feet. They will include usable porches in the front, as well as have the two-car driveways and garages. And these two will have the raised foundations, a minimum of 18 inches, as well as features such as the undulating roof lines and landscaping along the base rear and garages. Here's a rear perspective of those, and an example of a highly visible side elevation for one of the single-family homes. This site will offer a large amount of amenities from the north to the south side of the property. On the north side, the largest amenity area will include amenities such as a pavilion, which will be architecturally inclined to match with the area and somewhat upscale. The center part of the plaza area to the east of this open space area will come, the hope is to commission artwork and have it installed in this area, engage the community to come see it, as well as engage the community to put into this amenity area. Some other amenities that would be offered with this, ping pong tables, foosball, as well as cornhole in the form of permanent concrete structures for the residents to utilize. There was also ample seating included throughout the development, as well as bike racks, and an open play field for people to enjoy as well. On the south side amenity center, this has included more of an intimate setting with a centralization on seating and socialization by use of fire pits and plaza areas. This too will offer some amenities such as the cornhole area as well. And this also includes bike racks for the residents' use. Access to the site will primarily be from Wilkinson Pike from the north, with a second entrance from Willow Oak Trail. I just want to note that the single-family homes on the south side of the plan, those would not be platted until that extension from Willow Oak Trail is built, as to avoid frontage on a road, frontage onto no road at that point. Here's a perspective of what the internal streets would look like. This is the private roads. They would include the side street parking, street trees. The main pedestrian crosswalk as part of the plan would also be a raised walking area to help prioritize pedestrians. This is the alley within one of the townhome areas. As you can see here, the vehicular traffic is guided to be behind the homes. And here's an example of one of those raised crosswalks. Landscaping would be heavily landscaped along the base of the buildings, as well as the berm and buffer along Wilkinson Pike, to include that extra bit of screening to help transition from Wilkinson Pike to the development. A buffer is proposed on the east side. Here's a photo of that proposed buffer, what it could possibly look like. The landscaping that would be installed would follow the GDO guidelines for what would be required. Here's a sample section of the Wilkinson Pike buffer with the initial planting size as well as the mature height of the plants. Here's an example of the possible plantings that could happen around some of these structures, so they do follow the front, sides, and rears of each unit. Here's some examples of some potential plants, vegetation that we use in our plans. One of the discussions from the neighborhood meeting was particularly about drainage. This site does help with the overall drainage of the area, as approximately post-development, 9 acres went to the north of the site. Post-development, it's only about 2 acres. With the extension of the stormwater pipe from the assisted living facility and incorporating into that, the amount of stormwater can be significantly reduced for that northern part. And the detention and stormwater plan is consistent with the stormwater master plan for the area. And as a precaution, like other plans, this would have to be submitted to the city at a site plan level, and all drainage calculations and proposals would be reviewed by city staff. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to elaborate on anything further if you need it.
I had a couple of questions or maybe some clarification on looking in the plan book at pages 9 and 10. And I'm looking at the high visibility units, the red dots.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some inconsistency from page to page on the red dots and but for example, on page 9, if we look at page 9.
So
Look at page 10.
I see that. We will fix that. What that is a rendering of some of the street trees in fall color red. So we will change that color from the trees. Those are not representing the enhanced site elevations on page 10.
On page 10, on the right side of that page?
Oh, correct. Page 10.
I think those pages just need to be reconciled, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the main thing
we'll
I
reconcile
mentioned,
those,
like
make sure.
off of Wilkinson Pike, on page 10, there is not a red dot on the 2 units that are right beside the main road coming in.
Yeah, we will put those back on there. It looks like they were left off. Those will have the enhanced site
It just
elevations.
needs to be consistent, and I really think that any end unit, even, down this back alleyway that adjoins up to the proposed Clary Park development, I would still think you should have those should be high visibility units. You've got I know it's just an alleyway, but there's also a road on the other side in the Clary Park, best I can tell from that. I just think that you need to try to have those anywhere that there's any question that it could be considered a high visibility unit, but specifically on your main road coming in.
Yes.
And try to get them consistent on all of the drawings throughout.
Yes, we'll make sure we reconcile that.
And the other thing, I was trying to just get a good feel for visitor parking. I see in the area where you have the fire pits and things that there's some visitor parking, 3 spaces on one end, and it looks like 4 or 5 parallel parking spaces on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't really, maybe there's a page I should be looking at. Is there more visitor parking somewhere, or?
For that area, the visitor parking, you are correct, is along the side parking and near the west side of that open space area.
Mm-hmm.
The idea for these open space areas for the residents was that it was definitely more of a walkable experience.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that some people might have still the need to drive these spaces, but the overall design intent is to make sure that this is a walkable community so they could easily
Yeah.
access these spaces.
And I think that's great for this area, but what I'm asking is, are there other visitor parking spaces throughout the development
Throughout
that I just can't see?
throughout the rest of the development, on the northern amenity center, there is guest parking to the west, as well as that main street. There is side street parking on both sides of that, up into where it tees off on the north side, right before the single family, and then there is additional parallel parking on the north side of that drive.
Okay. Which page would you say I should look at to see that?
I think if the cable department could go to my computer, I think the parallel spaces that he's referring to are here and on both sides, all the way up and down this main drive.
Okay.
And then there are 3 spaces here, and then looks like probably about a dozen over here as well. Did I capture all those, Mr. Grover?
Yes, yeah, and we can add a graphic to help clarify where all the guest parking resides within this development.
I think I had the same question, Chair Jones, and I asked Matt Taylor, and I think he said there was either 62 or 64 guest parking spaces, which made me very happy. You know how I feel about parking, especially when I saw that we were reducing the driveway size to only fit 2 cars as opposed to 4. Oh, 65, perfect, thank you, Brian.
65 total.
Almost there. So I'm really pleased with the guest parking. This is probably the first time in a while. I've been happy on the first try.
Yeah. Okay. Looks good. Okay, what other questions?
After discussion at council today, is there a reason to do the detached as HBRs instead of single lots?
To do the attached, you said?
Or detached?
Detached? It fits, allows us to do a higher density with the single detached.
We'll ask the owner to come speak to that
if you don't mind.
Good evening. My name is Mike Burton. I work for the applicant Toll Brothers. Regarding your question on the HBR, on the single families, the Wilkinson Pike buffer being 100 feet, approximately 80 on our plan, doesn't provide the lot road frontage for those lots specifically. So incorporating them into the community as an HBR allows us to provide limited common elements around the home specifically so that they will live and feel like a single family lot. However, with this community, there will be the option for the homeowners association to maintain all of the community open space, limited and not limited open space around each of them for consistency and quality.
Okay.
And if I may, regarding the waiver or the exception for the garage. So we have 3 product types, the single-family detached homes, and 2 different product types of the townhomes, the single-family attached. The 2 attached units are 20 feet wide and 22 feet wide. 41 of the townhomes of the 77 are the 20-foot wide units. Those are the only homes that will have the 3-inch narrower garage interior dimension. However, they are 10 inches deeper than the minimum standard for the city of 20 feet. So those will be 20 feet, 10 inches deep and 19 feet, 1 inch wide. And the purpose for that is that there is a fire separation curtain wall between the units that is approximately 6 inches, I think, and it takes up 3 inches within that garage space.
And how wide are the detached houses?
So those are 30 feet wide, and those will have a minimum of approximately a 20-foot garage wide.
Does anybody remember if Claire Park did polycarts as well, that was private trash pickup? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Ms. Green they do have private trash.
Thank you.
Private trash. And this is private trash too, right? Not a compactor?
I think that one of the things that Ms. Green said, one of the exceptions they were asking for was to be able to use carts instead of a compactor as they would normally be required to have a compactor, but they will be private carts and not city carts.
And it'll be required to store in the garage, I read, right?
So Are the garages are for cars only?
Correct, and, trash and very limited storage, but the purpose of the garage is to park the cars, and that would be written in the HOA documents.
Okay. I guess the only question that we were talking about was the alleyway and serviceability for fire. Will a fire truck be able to get down the alleyway to be able to service?
Yeah, as part of the booklet, there's turning movements for the appropriate fire truck sizing per the city standard.
It's just hard to see in just a rendering. It looks like it's
Yeah.
smaller.
Yeah, that one
bit of a pull-up.
corner looks really, really tight, but maybe it's a lot bigger than it looks in this little drawing.
There may be a corner where it clips the curb.
Okay.
The one on Willow Oak Trail looks pretty tight. Okay, any other questions, or do y'all have anything else any other information to provide before we open the public hearing?
No, I just want to thank you for having me here. If you guys have any other questions, we're more than happy to answer.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so we will open the public hearing for this item and ask anybody that would like to speak on this to come forward. And again, please remember to state your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes if we have anybody that wants to speak on this item. Anybody here for this item tonight? Okay. Last chance. Okay. We'll close the public hearing. And what other questions, comments, and concerns from the Planning Commission on this item?
I'll say I have very few concerns. Out of a lot of the developments I've seen come through here lately, this one looks really good. And I really like the parking, and I think the developers and the architects and SEC did a great job on it, so. I'll be positive if anyone wants to throw a negative in there.
I guess for me, what's the staff's position on the MU versus all residential?
I'll defer that to Ms. Green.
I think early on, they reached out to our planning director to discuss that as a change of use. And I think that the direction was that if they incorporated some single-family detached instead of all townhomes, which is where they were started, that he could be more comfortable with that. And so that was kind of the starting line. And then I worked with them as far as the site development, architecture, and landscaping. Ultimately, we're careful to not give any kind of this is appropriate or this isn't appropriate, but give you the tools to consider, hopefully, what you think might work here. If you do think that this development works, it may be a good opportunity to implement the transition policies I noted and have it deviate from what the future land use map recommends. Of course, I think Clary Park did change a lot around here. We were really looking for more office and commercial for a long time, but with the sheer amount of residential, it'll look a little bit different. So the direction we were given was that we were comfortable with residential so long as they increase single family. I don't know what the numbers should be. That's probably not appropriate for me to decide, but I did want to be able to give you whatever tools we have to consider it.
I guess my last question would be on the 100-foot buffer. So talk to me about why the buffer was put in place, and if we infringe on it, are we doing something that we don't need to?
So the buffer was put in place in 2003 or 2004. It may have been 2004. The Gateway Design Overlay District was new to our community. As you know, Class A office space did not exist in Murfreesboro at all. And rather than waiting for the market to provide us it, we created a space for that. And that was a pretty significant goal of the Gateway, particularly the GDO 3, so it's around the hospital. Medical Center Parkway was constructed as an economic development opportunity. It wasn't so much a road to get people out of town really quickly, but a place to create that Commerce and a different place than Murfreesboro had before. Some of the things when the gateway was originally adopted, I think you can see that we've probably grown with early development and what it looks like now, and I think that the talent of our staff has increased. But there was, at the time, concern because there were county residents in the Battle Park up there, so the 100-foot was basically put as a blanket along the south side just to create some separation and distance from there. There's also a buffer along I-24 on the northeast side that separates the buildings from the actual interstate, and so there's a buffer there, so those are the two places. I think with what happened to the west, it probably justifies some consideration for having it look different. And so if they're continuing that berm, I think that would be appreciated. What I've heard from people who live nearby, they like the landscape berm because instead of just the distance requirement, it has a vertical separation. So I think 20 feet isn't a huge encroachment. It is an encroachment, but the fact that they're compensating with the berm and it's already changed right next to it, it makes sense to maybe break that here at the Villages or at the next street. So it was put in place as a, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but let's just put this buffer here. And then when you have it next door, it's hard to say no to them when it's right next door.
And I think it also originally, you know, all the people up and down Wilkinson Pike at that time, the residential side of the street could only see that what they were going to be looking at was going to be commercial right across the street from them. And that had a big, you know, that was a big reason I felt that 100-foot berm, you know, was a part of why we put that in place. And I think it gave a comfort to those residents on the other side because really they did think they were only going to be looking at commercial. And now I think to encroach on it a little bit, the fact that they are going to be looking at residential and still a nice landscaped berm, even though I was quite concerned with it originally because I think we've been very protective of that 100-foot berm. I think in general it's a good compromise.
Ms. Jones, you and I remember that probably the planning director at the time, one of the famous lines was distance is the best buffer. And so, and oftentimes it is the best buffer. And so that distance of 100 feet was what was proposed. I think today we think that there can be combinations of distance and other things to make a good buffer, but that was something that we heard at many planning commission meetings, that distance is the best buffer, and I think that was the solution. I think people, and so I've got the staff report that talks about what can't go in there, but essentially it's just to add that distance. And the height of buildings was really concerned as well because, I mean, a 6-story hotel right on Wilkinson Pike would have a very oppressive feel as opposed to maybe a single or 2-story building.
Because at that time, all they could see was the Embassy Suites that had just been built, and that's a good distance away.
Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, the chamber was, you know, so, anyway. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Concerns? Okay.
He's interested in clarifying something. Of course, it's your call.
Absolutely.
I just want to bring your attention, you were questioned on why the site elevations for the townhomes on the west side were not included. And that is, the reason for that was the alley for those homes is up against another alley against Clary Park. So it would be an alley to an alley, and that is why we didn't see it as a necessary component for the architecture to include that enhanced elevation on that side.
And that's, I won't hold fast one way or the other, or let maybe the rest of y'all, it's still a road you're driving up and down, and now you've got 2 roads side by side driving up and down. It's just other residents looking at other residents, and I'm just talking about the ends, but still, I understand. It's just alley.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I won't, I hope that maybe in a motion that gets made, somebody might ask for consistency and clarification on exactly where all the high visibility units would be before it moves on to council if it gets approved and moves on.
I'll make it.
Go ahead.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve this zoning application, subject to all staff comments, and also reconciliation and review of the pretty red dots.
Mhm.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, all right. Thank you all very much. And next, we will move on to item D. This is the annexation petition and plan of services for approximately 0.7 acres located along Elam Road, as well as approximately 3,700 linear feet of Elam Road right-of-way and the right-of-way of the Elam Road I-24 frontage road. Swanson Developments, LP is the applicant. Ms. Smith, good evening.
Good evening, Chair Jones, Commission. This particular item is a public hearing, and it's two components. So there's an annexation component and a rezone, and I'll go through the annexation component first. As you can see on the slide above, the annexation proposal involves one single parcel of approximately 0.69 acres on Elam Road that was previously known as 5505 Elam Road. Previously, there was a church on the site that was vacant for a number of years, and it was recently demolished. And so the adjacent property owner looked at wanting to annex and incorporate that simultaneous with the adjacent PID, Planned Industrial District. And as the city looked at that, we also wanted to study the potential of this frontage road shown along I-24, which is in the TDOT right-of-way, and then this portion of Elam Road between Manchester Pike and that TDOT right-of-way next to I-24. When we looked at this right-of-way, the right-of-way along Elam includes about 3,700 linear feet, and that ranges between 45 and 55 feet of right-of-way currently, and about 20 feet of asphalt. Whereas the frontage road is approximately 1,900 linear feet in distance, and currently the only thing it services is 2 billboards at the end of the frontage road, and both of those are in the county. We did reach out to both the County Road Board as well as TDOT, and both entities were fine with a consent to annex should the city choose to do so. In looking at that particular area, the reason why we included the the Elam Road annexation component is this section of our 2040 MTP includes a 3-laning suggested for Manchester Pike, and then on the opposite side of I-24, Elam Road in the north-south direction next to County Road is also anticipated for a 3-lane. So the connection point between here and here, we didn't think that all of it needed to be looked at, but just the component on this side of I-24, which we will get into a little bit more further on the rezoning question. As to the plan of services that we included in your packet, and you can see on this illustration, is it's generally large lot, single family residential uses within the county zoned RM, which is residential densities. We do have a newer school at this location here at Manchester Pike, and then of course the planned industrial district to the north surrounding the site. when we're looking at the future land use map for potentials, it does show it within our proposed, what we call an infill service boundary line, is actually at Elam Road, where you see these green areas are those areas that would be anticipated not to be annexed at any time in the future, as well as the gray areas on this opposite side. So it is within that future proposed land use map territory. And then in looking at the various services that are provided in the area, should the city consider annexation of right-of-way in addition to the parcel, police protection might be a little bit confusing to some. They think that they might have to annex an individual parcel, but when we look at the individual street, it's only street traffic control, speeding, that would be in the city's purview from our police department. Same thing with fire. It would only be response to that individual parcel, which there is a fire hydrant located on the existing site. But any of the residential uses outside city limits that would be along Elam Road would still be serviced by the county fire rescue. The only service that looked like it might be difficult was sanitary sewer that the applicant is aware of. Currently, the gravity sewer is not deep enough to reach that single parcel, but to the north, they actually have built a sewer pump station that services most of those, but they're anticipated that any development would tie into that system and would not be on the parcel that's proposed for annexation. As far as water, and it is a CUD water system, so they do have 8-inch pipe down at Elam Road, and then all of their other services come from Joby Jackson. And here is where you can see the sewer line and where it's anticipated to be constructed to, as Logistics Way is constructed to the north. And in looking at the annexation component and reaching out to all of those various services, staff believes that annexation of both the single parcel and those two adjacent right-of-ways, both that frontage road, that's TDOT, and the Elam Road in this one segment, should be supported because, one, it's within the city's urban growth boundary. That's today's city land use element. And it's also contiguous with our city limit boundaries. Now that the church is no longer in place, an industrial use adjacent to the PID seems more appropriate, especially as it could improve the connectivity. But the Planning Commission would need to confirm if that's an appropriateness of going to an industrial use, which is different with the rezoning as that application. Third, as I mentioned, it's within that proposed infill service line. That's our best available information. That's as far south as the city would like to at some point go, but that is, again, up to the decision makers. Fourth, Elam Road ties back to both Manchester Pike, which is proposed to be widened to 3 lanes, and Joby Jackson Parkway in that segment, and a new ingress-egress at the southerly end could potentially help reduce long-term passenger vehicle traffic, and that'll be discussed a little bit further during the rezoning component. And then lastly is that it could potentially improve the ingress-egress for emergency services. We'll discuss in the rezone how far this particular planned development to the north goes in. It's about a mile with no other outlet. This would provide a secondary outlet. So with that, would like to ask that you hold the public hearing. We did have a neighborhood meeting, which I think I'm going to discuss during the rezone or during this section.
Well, I think that it will be primarily discussed during the rezoning, but we did have a neighborhood meeting on Monday evening regarding the annexation and the zoning.
And so most of those questions were related to the connectivity, which we'll go over during the rezone because it's really related to what the plan book has and allows in that particular section. We'll report those out under the rezone component. And with that, we would ask that you open the public hearing for comments before, or if you have any questions before you open the public comment, I'm more than happy to answer those as well.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Smith before we open the public hearing? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. So we will open the public hearing. This is for the annexation petition and plan of services regarding the property along Elam Road and the I-24 road frontage. So if you want to speak regarding this annexation, then I would ask that you come forward now. We'll open the public hearing. Come forward and state your name and address. And then remember, we will also have public comment regarding the zoning of this property at the next public hearing. So, public hearing is open for the annexation petition and plan of services.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it?
It is.
You probably want to speak on the next one, but I can certainly, you are welcome. You're
She's always right.
You are certainly welcome to come up and speak, and you also get to come back at the next one. If you missed on this one, you can say it now, and then you get to practice and say it over again the next time. So, up to you. Okay. Anybody else want to come up and speak? Yes, sir. Come up.
Madam Chair and Council, my regards to all of you. My name is Wallace Maples. I'm at 5550 Elam Road. I have 7 acres there, and I farm. And I have an orchard and a large garden, and I spend every day, 6 days a week, in that position, doing what I can to feed myself and the neighborhood. I have a lead-in comment and 2 very brief points. I have 7 acres there. I'm 50 yards from the construction, the annexation area, and that's pretty close. Like I said, I spend 6 days a week out there, and for those of you, and I'm 90 feet from Elam to my garden where I spend the day. For those of you that are not familiar with linear feet, that's about 30 yards on a football field. And Titans Henry could probably make that in about 3 or 4 strides. Takes me a little longer than that at the present time. For the past 45 days, I have endured the cacophony of jake breaks from rock trucks for 6 days a week, every 5 minutes for 45 days. If I had some way to gather all of that and pipe it into some people's homes that I have sitting here, I would do that lovingly, because that is real bad on us. Anyway, the danger that has been occurring there is that these rock trucks drop off rocks that are the size of cantaloupes into the highway and into my yard. And so I'm constantly picking up rocks somewhere or another. This has been extremely dangerous, would have been terribly dangerous for motorcycles, for any motorized bike or anything of that nature, as well as cars. And if you happen to be standing down close to the road and they hit one of those, has the potential to do you a little bit of damage as well. I don't know how this group was able to get by TWRA, the Wildlife Resources Agency, but they have destroyed a significant additional amount of coverage for taking away the habitat of animals. So all the deer that they had living over there are now living over eating out of my garden. All the small animals are going to be eating my cantaloupe. And we're talking only about, not only about deer and all the small animals and all. We have 3 cougars, yes, cougars, living over in that area there. And if you'd like to see them at some point, my daughter-in-law has a video of 2 of them, the 2 cubs, playing in her front yard. So we've torn down a lot of stuff. So what I'm saying now, my first point is the road has been resurfaced on the right-hand side coming in at least twice. I don't know who's paying for that, but I'm hopeful that the county will send a bill for that. I know it'll have to be repaired again because the trucks are still coming. The rain's kind of kept them out a little bit. The second point is, I only want one thing. I want the temporary construction entrance permanently closed and heavily fenced. We don't need to have children going out of the neighborhood into that area because that area is potentially dangerous with all the manufacturing that's going to happen, with all the 18-wheelers that's going to be coming in and out of there as well. I hope they won't be coming down our road, but I don't hear anybody saying anything about stopping that in any way except for a sign. That sign has never worked. That is on Joe B. and Elam now. There's a big sign up there that says no trailer trucks. Maximum fine will be established. I don't know if you've been in touch with the sheriff's office and find out how many citations they've issued for not adhering to that, but I've given a lot of directions to drivers of 18-wheelers at 5550 Elam that have come around that way and passed that sign. And I also know that some other people in there have that concern as well. So that's all I'm asking. This has been a dangerous project. I think it will continue to be. I don't know what other ideas they have in mind, but whatever it is going to be just as dangerous as this has been in the past. And so I'm saying close that construction entrance permanently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. Anybody else want to speak on this item? Hello.
Hey, how are y'all? My name's Mark Green. I live at 5802 Elam Road. Just like this gentleman was saying, I'm tired of dump trucks flying down our road. I have videos on my phone of them going super fast down our road for this construction. I have kids and a wife that likes to walk our dogs on that road. And as far as she was saying earlier about if this goes on, it would be in the hands of the city police. We don't even have the sheriff's office that care about that road. Why would the city police come out there and write tickets to anybody? It is unsafe and it's ridiculous. So if any of y'all want to see videos or the damage that he's talking about that has occurred on our road, I have all that on my phone. And I like how they hide signs for planning and commissions and all this in tall grass that doesn't get weed eated around. I think I have those pictures on my phone also. I find that very funny that everything else would be cut except for where those signs are. And I've called the city and the county about it. No one seems to care. So who's responsible for any of it? Or is it just money rules everything and the rest of us just have to live where we live? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you for coming out. Who else wants to speak?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
My name is Peggy Maples, and I live at 5506 Elam Road. I'm going to be speaking in 3 ways here. I've got 3 individuals that I'm going to be speaking for. And so I'm going to start first with my neighbor with the Lopez's, if you guys would come on up.
Hello, I'm Brandon Lopez. I live at 5602 Elam Road.
And this is his wife, Miss Lopez. These are, this is their son, Brandon. The mom and dad is currently on vacation. At this point, they wanted me to make a note that they are new to our beautiful community. They love where they are. They bought this home, and it's beautiful extension to everyone. They currently have horses that are close to the Elam Road, among other acres that they have. They're currently on 6 acres. They are really concerned about the traffic that it's going to bring to our area. They're concerned about their business that they are bringing in with their horses and people that are there to board their horses. That could, you know, bring down their business a little bit there. They don't want it. So if do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
My parents had bought the property recently, and my wife and I decided to follow. The reason we followed is that we liked the quiet community, and that's what we were looking for. And then, of course, with the horses, they would like to have the horses there, and if the road got expanded, the fence, the wood fence that they're building along the road, along our property, would have to move back, and that would be a big inconvenience because it does cost a decent amount of money.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Okay, now I'm going to speak on the second behalf. This will be my home at 5506 Elam Road. And again, I've lived there 7 years. This is my father-in-law, Mr. Maples. And my husband and I built our retirement home, as we say. We're still young, but this is our retirement home and our everlasting home. We do not want to have to move. We are currently right across the street, within probably an extra 5 feet of what he said currently. We do see quite a bit. In my cameras, I have quite a bit of cameras. I counted 132 dump trucks. That's 7 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon. But I'm not going to address that because that's a part of the construction, and you're going to probably hear a lot of that. What I want to do is, can you pull the map up on the Elam Road? I know there was some pictures taken from our last area of meeting that we had for the community. Do we have a picture of that where the bridge is and the entrance of that area? I have one right here. If you notice right across the street, there's a fire hall. That is Rutherford County Fire and Rescue. That's a volunteer department. If you notice there's a bridge right there, as you're coming back over that bridge, you have that fire hall. It's currently down in a dip. My husband has been volunteering for over 30 years. When he brings that engine up, it's a blind side. We, many times, I can't speak of cases because it's private, and there probably, some of them have not been resolved, but currently we had one that went over. He was running 81 miles per hour. When they go down from 41 to Elam, they hit just Mr. and Miss Lopez's home, and when it levels out, then they start until it goes to another Miss Maples, and she's lost many areas of her fence. We are concerned about the traffic. We are concerned about the speeders. We are also concerned that in this area of where they're going to come out, where Mr. The gentleman that's currently doing this, Mr. Swanson, it is going to be a blind spot there. Now, we've all talked about trucks and cars coming out and businesses and people. What it's going to do, it's going to be more traffic on us. It's going to be more traffic on me. I don't want to hear it. And it's also going to bring just people coming to work. Do we know they're going to work first, second, or third shift? Okay. I'm just beating around the bush here for you guys. Now, I spoke with a lady yesterday. She was very sweet to call me. I had about a 30-minute discussion with her. I'm not going to mention any names. But on Joe B. Jackson, we have the FedEx plant, or the facility that was built. I believe it was 90,000 square feet. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then on top of that, there's going to be an additional 240 home complex being built as apartments. Could be more. Now, from my understanding, we have to have that access road, and that is the 3-lane road that's going to be built from Joe B through the complex area to Elam Road, because you're so congested there. Then you're going to build the 3-lane road going down 41 to Elam. Now, you guys can't tell me that you're not going to make another 3-lane road from Elam Road back over the bridge to the new area of where they're going to build, what is it, 120 pump gas station? So we know what's going to happen. My home is currently too close to the road, and that means I would have to move. And then let's speak on one more thing. I spoke to Mr. Swanson and a few others about the flooding. We currently have 3 sinkholes in that area. We currently have underground streams that run under Elam and in our properties. Now, when we had some blasting done on the Maples across the street from 41, it brought problems across the street to us, where the water sits on top, it has nowhere to go. I'm no engineer, but I do know that when you start building up, water flows down. You can pump as much as you want, you can have a retention pond as much as you want, but the rain we had last night that came through, it had nowhere to go. So I think instead of worrying about this little road and all these little areas, we need to start worrying about the little people, then do what you have to do. Now I'd like to go to the next address. If you bring up, Bob. Angie. 3 years ago, we started a community watch. And, you know, people most of the time, they laugh about stuff like that because they think, oh, we have nothing going on in our area. So my address, as I can't talk about some cases, maybe they haven't been resolved or maybe they're still under investigation. But we've had a lot of crime in our area. And when we started this 3 years ago, we, as a community, come together for most, and we join it to have some board members. And we basically watch our community. We know what's coming and going for most. And we're afraid at this point with all the new existing businesses you're going to have across the road, it's going to bring more crime and possibly more break-ins. And we've had that. So I'm going to step aside and I'm going to let them two talk for a second.
Good evening. My name is Bob Hoggett. It's H-O-G-G-A-T-T. I live at 5623 Elam Road. And our little area is at Zone 4?
Yes, we're Zone 4.
Zone 4. To my knowledge, we've had 19 incidents this year so far that have required an officer intervention. So if you kind of run that out for the whole year, you're looking at 35 to 40 times that's going to happen. Did a little research, and there's a website called Neighborhood Scout that has some statistics on crime in the Murfreesboro area. And they say for every 1,000 new residents, you can expect 29.84, so call it 30 new criminal situations. I know we're going to have more than 1,000 cars coming through here because besides the employees of this new development, if you make that 3 lanes, all these other cars are going to be coming through there. We're already a shortcut for any accident that happens on Interstate 24. It backs up there, they get off at Joe B and they start cutting through our places. I couldn't get out of my driveway some days because there's so many cars coming down the road. It's going to bring more criminal element. There's no way you can stop it, I don't think. So I want to know how that's going to be handled. And one question I've got with this annexation of the city right away to of Elam Road, we're still on county property, but the road going through is the city. Who's going to respond? Are we going to call the city police? Are we going to call county police? If we call, you know, if there's a city police car in the area, which I hope we're going to be scheduled for some more patrolling, if they are there close enough, can they respond onto a county property situation? You know, is that going to create gray area? Is it going to be one of these things where everybody's going, it's his responsibility? Right. You know, so I think we need to figure that out.
Okay. And I think we've talked about that, and we'll talk about it some more when we finish the public hearing. Okay. Address all your questions. All
right. So anyway, and like the rest of them, I'm just, you know, I live there. I bought this place to retire, and I'm really not crazy about all this extra traffic because it's going to be a lot like Manchester Pike here pretty soon.
Okay. Thank you
Madam
very much.
Chair and Commissioners, thank you. Good evening. I'm talking about the zoning the annexation right now. I'll be speaking again about the zoning. I'm very concerned about that.
Okay.
I'm concerned about
And
the
your
safety.
name and address. I know you're.
Pardon?
If you'll just state your name and address.
Angie Kleino, Angie McFarland Kleino, 5942 West Scum Road. My road goes on to Elam. It's very near the Swanson property that we're talking about.
Okay.
I'm very concerned right now. I'm talking about the safety. I'm concerned about this exit too. I'll be talking later about that when we talk about zoning. But I'm concerned about the crime. We have had people cutting through West Gum Road and checking out our neighborhood. And the more traffic, we're about a lane and a half road. We're a short road from the Manchester Highway to Elam. And we have had people just coming through and scanning and seeing what's there and how they can break in. And we've actually had break-ins. I'm afraid we're near two school zones, as has been mentioned, Whitworth Buchanan Middle School and the elementary school, Buchanan Elementary School. And Mount Tabor and West Gum Road suffer some of the same concerns about the crime as people cut through and check the neighborhood out. I've also, tonight coming here, had a dump truck coming out of the Swanson property and a car. I met on Elam, and they were cutting through, and then I met on West Gum Road a man cutting through. And so I'm really concerned about the safety of our neighborhood and our schools. Thank you for listening to me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Anybody else that wants to speak on this item? Okay.
Good evening, Chair Jones, Commissioners. I'm Joe Swanson, 3614 Manchester Pike. I'd like to address a couple of things, and first I'd like to apologize to the community out there for the rocks that they've had to deal with over the last month and a half. A majority of these the big reason was that there was no power. Middle Tennessee Electric did not have enough power coming from Joe B. Jackson to service the development. So I had to go through Middle Tennessee, and it's a 24,000 volt line, and they would not let me install the line to service the development without building a shot rock road that I could then dig 5.5 feet down to install this line. So that was a part of why the rock is coming from that direction. Some of it did go to building some pads. Yes, I did talk with the loader. My superintendent talked with the truck drivers and my workmen that are out there. The loader is supposed to check and make sure there's no rocks on the tailgate. The drivers are supposed to check and make sure there's no rocks on the tailgate and check the rocks that get between the tires. More than likely, these rocks come from the tandem axle that's in the front, where they get sandwiched between the two tires, and then as they roll, they work themselves loose and come through. But I would like to apologize for that. The rock truck traffic will end in 7 good days of weather. We'll be finished with that rock traffic. I have been in touch with Greg Brooks, which you all are familiar with, I'm sure, the road superintendent. I let him know what we were doing. He and I met out there. We talked about the failures. I paid to make the patches in the road and to overlay at the entrance. That all came out of my pocket to maintain that road. I know that it got rough, but coordinating asphalt companies at this day and time in this community is becoming more and more difficult. The rock trucks should be ending in 7 days of good weather. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Okay, we'll close the public hearing on this item and have some few questions we probably need to address on this item, and then other questions and comments from the Planning Commission. But I do think, and Mr. Swanson addressed some of the questions specifically regarding the rocks and the trucks that will end in the 7 days of good weather. That was the majority of the first 3. But we did have some concerns about flooding, and then I think we need to clarify again or discuss the discussion we had regarding who takes care of, fire and crime and how that works. Ms. Smith, if you can address those, so there's some understanding on that.
And I know this question came up at our neighborhood meeting, so I made sure to reach back out to PD today to make sure I was correctly understanding it, and it is reflected in your plan of services. But the way I understand it is when you call for an emergency, it calls into 911, and the 911 dispatch system is the one then responsible for assigning it. So an individual doesn't have to say, you know, I want county fire or I want city police. 911 dispatch is who handles that. But what I understand from our police department, they would be the ones that would be the responders to speeding issues, traffic accidents, anything related to motor vehicles on the roadway. They would be in response for that. Now, if it was a domestic violence, a break into the house, those kinds of things, that would still be serviced by the sheriff's department because those properties are within the county jurisdiction. That's what I understand from our police department. And then as far as fire is concerned, if there was a fire, let's say on the newly annexed parcel, that would actually be our fire services that would roll out as of the effective annexation date should we annex. And then the other ones would have their normal responses. So if you had a structure fire or a normal fire response, that would come through the normal county services. And I would assume, I think when I've talked to the residents currently, the volunteer fire department on Elam, right there at the bridge, is who responds, and they are the closest. Ours is about 4.5 miles away from this particular site. I know previously we were looking at, and I don't know, Matthew, if you know the status of, at one time we were looking at purchasing property and building a fire station in this section, but I haven't heard if that's not gone anywhere, but at that time it was up on Joe B. Jackson.
And I think if they have more questions about that, Mr. McKnight or Mr. Huddleston will be able to answer those.
And then on the water, I would not know the answer on that one. That I would maybe defer to the engineer. I'm looking for the engineer. I know you're in for Matt Taylor this evening, but I don't know if you have somebody that can address or talk about water for the site.
So when it comes to the site, the water primarily drains actually towards this site from the surrounding area. The just like any other site that is done within Murfreesboro, the coefficient of runoff cannot be greater than what the site started post-development. So that runoff will be the same and cannot and will not create any problems or make problems worse for the surrounding area. The detention for this will handle the development area and make sure that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming up to discuss that. So I think that kind of hopefully covers or explains, you know, basically they were talking about the road is the part that we're talking about annexing and the small parcel at the intersection there. And so those parcels, everything to do with the road would be covered by city police, city fire, but the actual residential parcels that surround these roads would still be covered by whatever you're covered by right now. If it's the local sheriff's department, if it's the volunteer fire department, all of that, whether it's to do with crime or fire, I believe that's the way that would work, if that hopefully answers those questions on that. What other questions or comments from the Planning Commission on this? We're currently talking about the annexation and plan of services for the 0.7 acres on Elam Road, 37 linear feet of Elam Road right-of-way, and the right-of-way of Elam Road / I-24 frontage road. not, we're ready for a motion.
Chair Jones, is this fixed to be settled here now before it goes into zoning?
Yes, then we're going to zoning. So this is closed. Mhm.
Okay.
So that public hearing's closed, so I'll have to let you talk at the next one. Okay? Thank you. Okay.
If there's no other discussion, I'll move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So that covers the annexation petition and plan of services. Now we will talk about the item E, which is the zoning application. This is to amend the Parkway Place PID, the planned industrial development on approximately 151 acres located along Joe B. Jackson Parkway and Richard Reeves Drive, and to zone approximately 0.9 acres located along Elam Road to PID simultaneous with annexation. Swanson Developments LP is the applicant. Ms. Smith.
Again, this is the companion zoning component to the annexation that you previously looked at and the plan of services. So this particular area is currently, as you see on the map here, it's a existing planned industrial district, number 2016422, that was amended back in 2016, but I believe it goes all the way back to about 2008 for that particular property. The existing property contains about 150 or so acres, with one additional parcel being considered as part of the planned development. The current zoning only has a potential emergency access point that's been identified that would tie into the frontage road. However, the frontage road, as I mentioned earlier, is part of TDOT right-of-way, so that is also under the control of TDOT and at the mercy of their development. Currently in the planned development, there is construction of a 880,000 square foot building here in Region 3. And you'll notice as we go through this project, there's different colors used for the existing planned development versus what's being proposed in the new planned development. But as you can see here, there's 4 regions in that area, one that's up towards Joe B. Jackson right-of-way and comes down and stops at Richard Reeves and the Treasure Way area. And then it transitions into Region 2 on both sides of the property. And then where the dead end of Richard Reeves is currently, it then transitions into Region 3, which is the higher buildings and larger, more intense uses, and then Region 4. So just kind of remember Region 4 and Region 2 are the areas closest to the adjacent residential, and it does include tree buffer areas that range anywhere from 25 to 125 feet. And along this narrower section, there's already constructed, I believe it's a 9-foot masonry wall, in addition to the buffering that was done in that particular area. This particular area is general plan designated. Let me jump to general plan. Currently designated as undeveloped, which is kind of interesting considering the, over to back. There we go. So in our general plan, it's currently designated, this very small blue piece is considered undeveloped in our current future land use plan, and then in our proposed future land use map is actually shown as public, private, institutional. And I think at that time, because there was a church there, we didn't know if it was vacant or not. Staff had looked at that as the potential designation for that particular piece. The city's zoning that actually surrounds that planned development includes some heavy industrial uses, which is where the Amazon building is today, about 1 million square feet in that location. As I mentioned earlier, it's county residential to the east side of the development, and then to the north is a lot more industrial as well. As I mentioned earlier, is because the land use element does not show the one parcel as an industrial piece, Planning Commission would need to consider whether or not going to an industrial use within this planned industrial development or district is an appropriate change of use for our general plan land use map. And currently, as part of the project, they are looking at 6 requests that are highlighted in page 8 of the program book. And that program book, scanning down to it, page 8. And this, the developer will go into a little bit further, but generally is changing one of the regions from Region 2 to Region 3, adding that one piece at the bottom, adding a connection road at the bottom, and then requesting an exception to the current maximum cul-de-sac length, as Logistics Way is currently approved to be longer than 1,000 feet, and they're including that in their subdivision. And they'll go through those specifically, but at the bottom, providing access to Elam Road for passenger vehicles, not for shipping or receiving deliveries, that the developer would be responsible of constructing, but that would be determined at the time. The second component is required by a traffic study that would determine whose fair share causes what traffic impacts to Elam Road. We did find out at the neighborhood meeting that the earliest they could anticipate future development that would trigger that requirement would be 3 years, and that would be 3 years before another site plan south of the existing Logistics Way approved street is to go south. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Katie Knoll to go over some of the adjacent context as far as traffic in and around the city.
Good evening, Chair Jones and members of the Planning Commission. I apologize. I'm not used to working this computer up here as often, so just forgive me in some of my... But one of the things I wanted to address is the city did ask for this connection to Elam Road just because there is a lot of development there already. We also know that Elam Road, while right now is a 2-lane county road, with development on Joe B. Jackson, with the Buc-ee's development, it's not going to stay that 2-lane. We've already got that in motion with plans to realign Elam Road at Joe B. Jackson right now, and actually even change the alignment from where it exists now. This connection provides everything within the Parkway Place development goes to the north and pretty much to one signal at Joe B. Jackson Parkway. And as you know, we are always looking to provide connectivity and alternate ways in and outs of development. Elam Road has a bridge over 24 currently, and that's something 24 and Stones River and the railroad serve as divides within our community, and with us already having an existing bridge, it does provide an important link within Rutherford County to provide movement of vehicles around and disperse traffic in various ways. Is there anything else? I think that's most of the points that I wanted to cover. Holly already touched on the traffic studies we would require at the time of development of those site plans. Any questions for me?
I have questions
for Ms. Nolan before she finishes?
Thank you.
All right now, thank you.
And the last things I just wanted to touch upon before I turn it over to the developer to go over the specifics of his component. I'm just making sure I'm covering everything. 4, 5, 6. The neighborhood meeting. So this is, I think, what most people are more specific to. So we did go to the neighborhood meeting. I think we had maybe about 30 folks that attended. Myself, Mr. Blomley, Mr. McKnight, and Mr. Aguilera from our planning department were there and present. Mr. Swanson, as well as a representative from SEC, was there, and then most of the adjacent neighbors. Biggest concerns that they had, of course, and you've heard some of it this evening, have been traffic problems on Elam. Some are existing problems, some are problems that they believe will be exacerbated if we have a connection road that comes from that particular development. The concerns that they had were existing speeding that they're experiencing today, and how they have clocked people at 80 miles an hour down that road. Existing and anticipated cut-through traffic coming from County Farm Road on the east side of I-24, and then also from Mount Tabor to the south. So they're using those two roads connecting to Elam Road and using that as a cut-through currently today. Third, needing additional turn lanes at Elam and Manchester Pike. With the school there, there's a lot more backup that occurs at Manchester Pike at Elam, that they believe that additional turn lane queuing would help to eliminate some of those things. Of course, visibility coming over the bridge, if you do go in that section, was mentioned earlier, was the fire department across the road is on the upswing of the bridge transition. And so they're concerned about that visibility combined with the speeding. Question came whether or not there would be a signal that would be proposed at Elam Road connection with the project, or at Manchester Pike and Elam Road, and that would be something that would have to be determined by a future traffic analysis, because they would have to meet signal warrants. The other thing was the roadway is undersized to handle truck traffic. Difficulty for the existing fire department to get out onto Elam Road. And then when I-24 closes, what happens now is traffic is rerouted to Elam Road. So those were kind of the big roadway issues that they had. Next one was really how the truck deliveries for just shipping, for the shipping and delivery could be stopped realistically by the developer. So I'm hoping the developer can maybe address that this evening. Existing construction noise. All hours of the day and night is their city requirements, which I believe we're taking a look at that, but there is. What's going to be going on in those existing buildings that are under construction, Mr. Swanson was able to share that with the community. And then the last one is, could that connection point at Elam Road be a fenced emergency access only and not allow passenger vehicles in it? So those things were brought up at the neighborhood meeting, and we said those are things that are valid concerns that they can voice again this evening, as well as share with the Planning Commission for the particular project. And with that, you all did receive, and is posted on our website, we did get an updated program book. We had mentioned that last time during our meeting when we set this public hearing, and that has been updated, and the developer will be going through that this evening as it relates to land uses, some of the connection points, and then we also have some building materials to hand out when we get to that portion of the meeting that we're looking at incorporating into the design materials as well. And so with that, I would ask the developer's presenter to please come to the podium. Make sure I get the right project. There we go.
Holly. Hello, I'm Brian Grover from SEC. I am here today here today with Joe Swanson from Swanson Development, and I'm just going to discuss and show the primary request with this PID amendment for the Parkway Place. I'll try to reiterate too much. The existing PID is located just northeast of 24 between Joby Jackson and Elam Road, currently surrounded by a majority of heavy industrial, along with county residential, commercial along the northeast near Manchester Highway, and some existing PRDs just northwest of that commercial area. Previously, the plan was about 150.5 acres, 4 regions, and it still, even with this amendment, maintains those 4 regions. As Holly explained, Region 1 being closest to Joby Jackson, with Region 2 being a flex warehouse incubator type product, with Regions 3 and 4 containing the heaviest industrial use located to the south west of the area, next to the interstate. The proposed amendment to this plan now makes about 151.33 acres. It's still using the same 4 regions. The modifications requested for this is primarily to add the parcel in the southeast corner, along with transfer some land areas between different regions. This is primarily wanted to be done because of the installation of a pump station is needed to help get the sanitary sewer to that northwest pump station, as discussed earlier. And in order to achieve that, some of the regions had to change because pump stations weren't allowed within the Region 2 within the PID. And that area is near the existing detention ponds along the west side near the interstate. Along with this request is the extension of a private access drive from the Logistics Way to Elam Road. Overall, it refines the areas 4, 2, 3, and 4, as well as the allowable uses permitted within those areas. The architecture for these buildings has also been updated within this amendment. Reason being, it's been about, I believe, 5 years or so since this last amendment. Some architecture requirements have changed, and the verbiage was just updated to match closer to what the city uses today. And the land use updates were primarily because the market has just evolved since the last time this was updated, and unfortunately there's been some potential users have been turned away because their land use was not currently in the allowable uses for this development. And lastly, once again, requesting that exception for the maximum cul-de-sac length, more to clean up the verbiage in that to make sure that is an allowable exception. The parcel that is being annexed is about 0.69 acres, and that would be split into both regions 3 and 4, respectively, about where down the middle. The Region 2 land transfer to Region 3, as I stated before, is primarily for the use of the pump station. The modified access to Elam Road. As working with the city, this was requested to help promote the general passenger traffic for the area, and we are more than happy to oblige with the city and provide that at their request. The concerns that we heard at the neighborhood meeting, such as with truck traffic, exactly how do you prevent that? With this being a private access drive instead of a right-of-way, on a development level, that can be regulated a little bit more than a public right-of-way could when it comes to truck traffic. Also, the developer has noted that he is willing to add to all of his leases for this area that tractor-trailer traffic, shipping and receiving, is not permitted to interleave the development through the Elam Road entrance. The other point to help reduce or negate traffic, trailer traffic, or the large truck traffic through that entrance is posted signage to prevent or at least notify vehicles that can and cannot enter that entrance. The connection to Elam Road will be required and constructed upon the the completion of the traffic study and submittal of the site plans for that southern region. As Holly and Katie stated earlier, the traffic for this area would be taken consideration, and the road improvements that would be deemed necessary would be outlined at that time. And the developer is willing to help improve those roads based on the requirements specified from that said traffic study. Skip that one. This, on the bottom here, the private section for the easement, or the private access easement section can be seen at the bottom of the page. It's about a 42 foot wide easement is what we're showing there. However, the official width of that easement would be decided at a site plan level. It still will allow for traffic to come and go, both passenger and tractor trailer that came from the Joby Jackson access point. The allowable uses, as I said before, these were primarily updated because the market had evolved to want to include some other aspects within it. One such example is breweries. And other items were added to help create a better user experience for the surrounding area, such as items being added with pet shops, but excluding overnight kenneling from that specifically. Other aspects of the land use that changed. The contractor's yard and storage was added under the stipulation of only to be allowed on the west of the Richard Reeves Drive. The original intent of this PID was to separate those uses that were closer to the residential, so to help maintain that. That stipulation was added to keep the original intent of the PID the same. Overall, as Holly mentioned in the neighborhood meeting, the main concerns we heard were primarily the traffic and Elam Road connection. As I stated, the developer's willing to put in his leases and do the signage and whatever road development is necessary based on the traffic study to help alleviate that connection to Elam Road as requested by the city. It's just something we're more than happy to oblige and help them if they request that of us. If you guys have any questions or concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Can I just ask, I mean, so is that something that y'all have discussed and tried to, I mean, I'm sure there are ways you do this, and maybe I should know, but I mean, how do you curb or restrict a truck from going down a road to get to Elam Road? I mean, do you put a gate up? I mean, or is there a width barrier or something that keeps them from being able to go any further down the road, and then once they get through that, they can drive on? Or what's the actual?
So there is a limit to exactly what can be done, and that's for a couple reasons. One, primarily is emergency vehicles, to make sure that they have access to these. Some solutions that were proposed, such as roundabouts and so on and so forth, to help keep tractor trailers out. Yes, that is a possible solution. However, we have to make sure we maintain the capability for emergency access vehicles to get through these. What that typically leaves us or allows us to do is post signage within these areas, or as suggested, it would be an emergency only access, but that would be up for you guys to decide exactly how you would want to handle that in terms with the us working with staff and trying to make that connection.
I would think you'd have to have that small enough road or whatever that restricted thing is that only lets like a car or a wide, van or something through, and then a pass-by lane with an emergency gate that is for emergency access vehicles to, I don't know, but I mean, if you're saying you're going to restrict access to Elam Road with all these big trucks that are coming and going to deliver to all of these extremely large developments. You know, I think we have to really be able to restrict that. So I just think we want to, I'd be concerned about exactly how that happens.
And that is something we'd be more than happy to continue to work with the staff with to find that solution.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we go to the public hearing?
The question I would have is, it sounded like the community said something about a gate at the end of that, maybe just emergency use only. The developer considered maybe doing that. I'm not sure I see the need to put through traffic through there all the time.
So part of the original PID, before, as it sits now, there is an emergency access proposal along the access road to the billboards along 24. The reason we are making this connection, as I stated, is we're trying to create a satisfy staff's wants for the connection for passenger vehicles for the area.
But just through the development, pretty much, right? That's the way I understand it, is this would only allow vehicles to go through the development, because you can't.
It's not a public right-of-way, no.
Right.
It would be meant for individuals who are working there as with their passenger vehicles to go to and from work, yes.
Right, and pretty much only those individuals is the way I kind of understand it. Is that right?
Individuals within the development, yes, but I mean, to what I don't know if the staff can, if you want to talk about more what your guys' desire.
I'd be happy to jump in a little bit. So what we as staff tried to do was to find kind of a happy medium between a public street, which would be much harder to, and I'm not saying that the private street scenario is a perfect situation and there will be 100% no tractor trailers ever, but we're building that into the language of the pattern book, and the things will be put in place to help us make that happen to the best of our ability. Will there be trucks that may use that? I'm sure there will be, but I think we're putting it into the pattern book and into the zoning plan that it would be for passenger vehicles only and not for shipping and receiving. And Mr. Swanson has indicated that he would include that in his leases and post signs. So, those are the ways at this point that we've thought of that we could help achieve that goal. But I did want to address why staff wants it. One, obviously it's for access for emergency services. And, right now we've got a development that's over a mile deep from Joby Jackson Parkway south. And, we want to create multiple ways in and out of that development to provide for emergency services. Two is for traffic disbursement, rather than all of the traffic, all of the passenger traffic gravitating to the north. Whereas, there are going to be numerous industrial developments in here, some of them that have already developed, and there's land that is yet to be developed. Everything, though, now has to gravitate towards Joby Jackson Parkway. So if someone who works at one of these facilities lives in southeastern Rutherford County or in Coffee County, and in order to get to their place of employment, they have to go beyond Elam Road, Manchester Pike to Joby Jackson Parkway into the development. Very circuitous route. In addition, it adds traffic to those segments of Joby Jackson Parkway and Manchester Pike, rather than creating a more direct route for those individuals and not adding that traffic on those existing major arterials. So it's also for traffic distribution from this development, in addition to the emergency service aspect.
Thank you, Matthew.
Sure.
Other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay. All right, thank you very much. All right, so we will open the public hearing. Ask anyone to come forward that would like to speak. I'll remind you again, we're going to ask you to give us your name and your address, whether you spoke at the time before or not. Yes, this gentleman gets to go first this time. But I will also remind you to please keep your comments to 3 minutes. We do have a lot of people here that would like to speak. Some of you have spoken already. Please remember to keep your comments to 3 minutes. So thank you and welcome to the podium.
Chair Jones, Commission, good evening. Thank you for hearing we the people. We're here this evening to oppose the exit entrance request made by Mr.
Please
Joe
don't
Swanson.
forget to start out with your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
3795 Mount Tabor Road, Marty Perkins, and this is my wife, Carrie.
Thank you.
But we are here to oppose this development and the access road to Elam Road. It is our understanding that Mr. Swanson's developed property will be under city jurisdiction, and his proposal is to bring Elam Road under Murfreesboro City jurisdiction from the bridge over Interstate 24 to Manchester Highway US 41, and then connect the two city-zoned areas together with a private road. Is this a common practice for the city of Murfreesboro to place random pieces of the city speckled out into the county and tie this together to be used by developers as they see fit? Is this, and forgive me for my lack of knowledge of how everything works and the ins and outs.
Well, it changes often, so
It
don't
does,
worry
it
about
does, I'm sure, and forgive me for stammering and not knowing, especially concerning the city's intent for urban growth. I don't know what the big picture is, and this may be part of the big picture, I don't know. So, anyway, just to continue, and I'm going to try to stay in my 3-minute time frame. My neighbors and my family are not opposed to growth. We know it's going to happen, but it has to happen in a correct manner. Already we suffer the repercussions of traffic in our neighborhood. We are the back road shortcut. People who work at all these facilities on Joe B. Jackson already use Elam Road as their shortcut heading home to Coffee County mostly. All the while throwing out their trash and littering along the way. This is just day to day. This is just day to day. Now we'll talk about the major thoroughfare we become if there is a wreck on I-24 or it comes a heavy rain and water is over the slabs at County Farm or Rutger Road. Any of those two things happen, it all floods our way. We become the major thoroughfare. It's ridiculous the amount of traffic. Everything from tractor trailers on down. Mr. Maples has really already defined the fact that tractor trailer drivers have a problem reading, just to reemphasize that. So tractor trailers on roads not wide enough to support such traffic, nonetheless another outlet for Amazon and every other business in this industrial park to have another exit to dodge red lights and a shortcut home. It was brought up the fact, these people coming from Coffee County, they got to go all the way up to Joe B. Jackson to get to Amazon. I drive to Nashville and Brentwood, and I'm a construction worker. I drive all over the place all day, every day. I've been commuting my whole life. So what? Big deal. You go around. You'll get there. The Elam Road connection affects more than just Elam Road. Mount Tabor Road is already a continuation of the shortcut path. This road is narrower than my driveway. It is so narrow that when the county repaved it some 10, 12 years ago, when they striped it, they couldn't even put a stripe down the middle of the road because what would be left would not constitute a lane. So they just left it. They just left the stripe off, except for a 20-foot piece right at the stop sign at Elam Road, just to separate the cars, I guess, to show everybody you do have a side. I have to line my yard with cinder blocks to keep people from driving in my yard. They don't care. You can ask all my neighbors here, living proof right behind me. Carrying on. Whitworth Buchanan school zones. Some days it's just about impossible now to get from point A to point B without having exceedingly long wait times to navigate Elam Road and Mount Tabor Road intersections. We have to literally check the time to determine if we can go into town or not, be it because of the schools and the school zones or Amazon getting off work. I mean, it's ridiculous. Why there isn't at least a turn lane, which I just heard for the first time today that that's a possibility going out Manchester Highway. But anyway, why there isn't a turn lane from Joe B. Jackson out past the Buchanan Elementary School is beyond us, but that in and of itself would solve a multitude of traffic issues and be money more well spent versus any upgrades that would have to happen on Elam Road to accommodate a larger volume of traffic. These school zones are probably one of the biggest factors causing people to navigate around and through our neighborhoods. We have been told that another reason for the proposed private road tie-in to Elam Road is for emergency vehicles to have another access point. This doesn't hold water. The whole purpose of Joe B. Jackson Parkway was to accommodate all the city services, including emergency vehicles. Also, if this emergency point of access is absolutely necessary, TDOT has the road that was pointed out that runs along I-24. TDOT has a service road that could easily be tied in to facilitate that need. And is it common for city services to travel private roads to access other city services? It's just a question. I don't expect an answer. It's all about the big picture. We're not opposed to it, but we need to be part of it. If you're prepared to grow, growing isn't a big thing, but lack of preparation makes growing very painful. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Beverly, and I live at 401 Davenport Drive in Murfreesboro. I have two issues I'd like to speak on this evening. The first one is the Fieldstone Trace subdivision. Some folks back there have really been concerned with some of the acceptable uses of this property. One in particular was a lumber yard. So they just asked that you would strongly consider that one being removed from allowable uses. A couple other issues. The gate at the end of this property is really what a lot of this community is interested in. An electronic keypad with a manual override to allow emergency services to get through in case of an emergency or even an electric failure at that point would alleviate a lot of these folks' concerns. So we understand 24 going both directions gets shut down very, very frequently in the Beech Grove area. That would force traffic onto Epps Mill. A lot of folks are concerned with traffic leaving this development, but it's also traffic coming in. A lot of these truck drivers, they don't have ill intentions, but they're following their GPS. So they're coming in, and they could be coming in off of Epps Mill northbound on Manchester Pike, only to take a left onto Elam Road to get into the development, because that's what their GPS told them to do. The problem is, once they're on Elam Road, it's very difficult for them to turn around. You have a bridge that may or may not be rated. You also have a road that may or may not be rated. If they turn down Mount Tabor, there's no getting out. So that's a really large concern for a lot of these folks, and I just want to make sure that that's heard. And lastly, with the city potentially annexing Elam, It's making sure there's proper signage for these truck drivers to make sure we don't get into an issue of them turning down Elam or Mount Tabor, not realizing that that road is not made for trucks that size. So that's about all of my concerns. I appreciate y'all's time.
Ms. Jones and Commissioners, I'm Randall Patterson. I live at 5807 Elam Road. Been there about 26 years. I think, Ms. Jones, you brought up a couple of questions, and I don't know your name, but you did too. The same things that we're talking about. The cars dumping out on the Elam Road from the development there. I think if we have a way just for emergency vehicles, it probably satisfies a lot of our questions. I'm an EVP of Operations in North America for Steel Technologies, 2 locations here in the county. In a 24-hour period, I'm putting 350 tractor trailers on the road between Smyrna and Murfreesboro. Florence Road, call Brian Hercules. He calls me once a week. Matt and I talked about it the other night because we have tractor trailers come the wrong way, and they're writing tickets. It's really hard to control that. Mr. Swanson can put it in his leases. I don't know how he's going to do it. I talked to traffic companies or trucking companies all over North America. We send letters. We do all kinds of stuff. We give them directions, and they still don't get it right. So major concern there. There is a cemetery nobody's talked about right across from where we're talking about bringing us traffic out. And there's a lot of services that goes on there, and those people have parked at that church in the past. Now they're parking on the side of the road. So we just need to really control that from letting all of that car traffic out. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you for letting me speak today. My name's Alan Cook. I live at 2915 Mount Tabor Road. And my concerns with this access road is that the traffic would absolutely put a encroachment on the community. I don't really understand why they think they have to have an emergency access off of a back road when you could come into that same facility from Joe B. Jackson just as every other road that is a one-way in, one-way out also has one-way in, one-way out access for emergency. Most of the facilities that are on Joe B. Jackson all have Ready First training, which means there's people at the facility that's trained in first aid, CPR, to work defibrillators, and that would be for every shift. A place like Amazon, FedEx, they have on-site medical personnel for emergency responses. It would be kind of hard for a fire truck to get down our road as it is now to get in there, even if it was just an emergency access into that gate, if there was a gate. If it was allowed to be a road so that traffic would come out of that facility to come and go to work, then that would compound any emergency in the surrounding neighborhood if there was an emergency that had to be taken care of because of the potential traffic there, on top of, the school zones that they would have to go through also. So I really don't see a need for an emergency access on the backside of that property, because there's several places away from Joe B. Jackson that also only have in and out access, as behind General Mills is 4 other complexes inside that gated entrance. And they have excellent first aid response, and I just believe that we really don't need to have that access road there at all, period. I don't think that it's even, I don't think, even if it was just an emergency access for the time being, once the developer's gone, when other potential people move in, they could be asked to be come up again as, and be changed again down the road. That's all I got. Thanks.
Yes, my name is Randall Upchurch. My wife and my mom, we live at 5838 Elam Road, and my concern is pretty much some of the same of what's been mentioned already with the safety and stuff. Elam Road is just not a road that could handle what they're talking about doing, and not only that, but I'm concerned with not just the safety of myself and our neighbors and stuff, but I have a mom that has dementia, and although she uses a walker, she has been known to just sitting there at the house and go into a dream and think that we're outside. And although she uses a walker, she can actually walk without it, and she can actually get outside. So if she were to ever, by chance, even though we got caregivers that watch her during the day, if she were to ever get outside without their knowledge while they were preparing her meal or in the restroom themselves or whatever, then she could get to the road. If she got to the road, and with the extra traffic that we would have there, she would be in danger herself. And so I just don't feel as though that I want to put any extra risk towards my mom and then anybody else that may be driving a vehicle coming out of their driveway or whatever. There's so many different ways to get into where we're at of Elam Road, whether it be Mount Tabor or Gum or the slab coming off of Elam Mill, or County Farm Road, or even from Joe B. Jackson itself. And then we've got our neighbors on Mount Tabor that have, we got a subdivision back in there that people come through Mount Tabor, and we've just got enough traffic as it is already, so we don't need to add any more. But we appreciate your time, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Upchurch.
We're going to say the best for last. Dale Bonifant, 5317 Elam Road. I live on the other side of the bridge. I think they said most of it. I think we all agree. It is a health hazard. If you come across that bridge, motorcycles come across there, trucks come flying through there. Occasionally I flew through there. I'm not going to deny it. And it is dangerous if someone was to pop out there. So I'm going to keep it short. I agree with him. I think it is a danger. But if there's an alternative, I mean, be open to alternatives. But right now, it's not an alternative to have a road there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Angie McFarland Kleino. Thank you for letting me speak. I live on 5942 West Gum Road. I'm in the same situation as Mount Tabor. My road goes on to Elam. I have 2 points, I'd like to make. One, there's already a good exit for the Swanson development and the people he sold the land to going to Joe B. Jackson. I go on Joe B. Jackson a lot. They did a fabulous job of constructing that for all the traffic, the 18-wheelers, the cars, the traffic going from South Church over to Manchester Highway. That is what is set up now for the Swanson properties and businesses to go, using Richard Reeves Drive and Joby Jackson, going straight onto that property. I've never seen a problem on Joby Jackson. You were mentioning a lot of traffic. When Amazon gets out one shift, there's a lot of traffic, but the other side is fine, and the traffic gets out fast. I've been there, I've seen it. So you've already got that set up for this property, and it's working well. Elam is a little country road. There are actually families that have lived there and in our area for 5 generations. You have people you've met tonight who have moved there to be in the country. Some of the properties 5 acres, some is hundreds of acres. I own 35. We want to be in the country. If you take just the cars and employees coming from these businesses, and now you said put the traffic onto Elam to help with the traffic on Joby Jackson. Joby Jackson is set up for this traffic. Elam is not. You're taking away our community and our road. You're not only endangering us, but you're taking away a way of life for many of us. So I ask you to seriously consider not letting there be a connection exit onto Elam. And thank you for listening to me. Oh, and if you get a chance, just come drive down Elam sometime in Mount Tabor and West Gum and just see how nice it is and why we're all here asking you, please, to not let this happen to us. It's in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is George Nelson. I live at 5704 Elam Road with my wife Penny. I live right on the corner of Elam and Mount Tabor, where Marty lives at. And right where he's talking about, as you turn onto Mount Tabor, the road is wide enough for 2 cars for about 50 feet. Then it all of a sudden goes to 1 lane. And so when people are not courteous enough, they decide they want to ride in my yard and Marty's yard because the 2 try to pass that lane. So that's, again, something that was done years ago, probably will never change. You know, we talked about they're going to put signs up telling trucks not to go down that road. We got signs out there right now, and they don't pay attention to them. We got signs out there that says, don't dump your trash, and we have people dumping trash out there. So I don't see how a sign is going to prevent people from going down our road and creating a lot of traffic.
Where he's talking about where we live on the corner of Mount Tabor and Elam, I have counted numerous tractor trailers, and we have rock columns at our driveway that have almost clipped that corner of our drive every time they come through. I've even told to get the tag number, the name of the vehicle that's putting them out there. We've called numerous times. They never do anything about it. They still come. Another concern I have, and I'm sure he's going to get into this as well, is if they do annex this, and I hope to God that y'all vote against this as a no, but I'm wondering about if they annex this road, what is the road going to be from this point on? Are they going to widen it? Are they going to take some of our property? Some of our property involves a ditch, which holds a lot of the water on a lot of the properties around us. And if they go and try to widen that, then that's going to throw more water up into our yards and things. So that's another reason I'm against it. And like he said, the gentleman mentioned about putting signs out and controlling the traffic. That's not working now, and it's not going to work then. That's all I got to say.
Ma'am, if you could state your name for the record, please.
Penny Nelson.
Thank you.
And also, there where they want to make this access road at, the bridge is going up the road goes up the hill to hit the 24 bridge. That bridge is probably, 60 to 70 years old, if not older. It's been there for a very long time. And it needs to be rebuilt if they're going to have all this traffic coming across that bridge. And just like the fire hall, that's a blind spot for anybody coming out of the fire hall. And you put an access road down there without a traffic light of some sort or something to slow those people down, there are going to be numerous accidents down there. The fire truck won't even have to go out of the drive. They can just walk across the road and take care of the people because there'll be so many accidents. And it'll be the same way up at Elam Road and Manchester. You'll need to put a light down there to control the traffic for the school and everybody trying to come into that factories that'll be down through that access road. So it's not feasible. It's not going to happen. Again, if you're going to annex that road, our part of the road, what are you going to do to it? Are you going to widen it so that it can accommodate this traffic? How much is that going to cost? Who's going to absorb the cost? The city? The county? Us? How's that going to happen? And we've got, almost everyone on our road has brick mailboxes. You're going to destroy those. You're going to have to move them because you're going to widen the road. We do not have any emergency access off our road. Our road, where it ends, normally dips down into a ditch. So that means you'd have to expand the road to accommodate this large traffic. Right now, these dump trucks, they're riding down the middle of the road. You know why? It's because they've torn up the side of the road coming from Manchester Pike down to that access point that they're making. They've torn all that up because that road cannot handle the weight of those vehicles. Yeah, they've come out and passed it, but now they're riding down the center of the road and they're creating more ruts in different places because of the weight of the vehicles. Yeah, 7 more days. Well, that's if the weather's good. Okay? I don't see how that's going to happen, but
Okay.
I hope you guys do not approve this because you're taking away our way of life. We decided to move out to that area because we like living in the rural community. Don't turn this into the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ms. Nelson. Who's next?
Hello again.
Hello.
I'm Peggy. I'm 5560 Elam Road. I've been texted and spoken to a couple people that want me to address a few things. Boy, what a show tonight, right? We need some popcorn, don't we? One thing that we haven't discussed a lot about, I'm just going to jump over the bridge here, is communication between county and city. Okay, we know that's a hot topic. With whether it's our county fire or our city fire department, we know that we have 7 zone officers for the county. Just last week, I had an incident at my home. It took them 38 minutes to get to my house because they were short-handed. They were currently 2 officers short, and so that means they have to bring 1 officer from another zone to this zone, and that would be our zone. Now, let's talk about, again, we're going to talk about the roads, and I know a few of them have addressed this. If we have flooding, how many of you been down County Farm Road? Who's went over the one-man bridge, as we call? What happens when it floods? We get rerouted. What happens when our fire truck and our ambulances and our police officers can't get through there? What do you think is going to happen when you put that gate there, if it's approved, or whatever gate, or emergency exit, however you want to call? How is the city going to get through versus the county? Again, it's miscommunication. So I want you to think about that. I believe that we're going to be sitting right here again between the county and city, and someone's going to want to fork the bill for a development. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
Mark Green again, 5802 Elam Road. The basic question, and somebody should be able to answer this, right? What advantage would an emergency vehicle have coming down our road in the back way than coming off Joe-B Jackson? Joe-B Jackson, they're right there. Why would they come around to our road and back through if it's going to be a city property? Not coming from south. They're gonna come from north, from Joe B. Jackson. Why would they need to come to our road? Does anybody have an answer for that? What would make it any easier for them to come to our road than just to drive from Joe B. straight through the complex?
And we will answer all the questions at the end, but the main thing would be tornadoes, fires, anything that blocks that Joe B. Jackson at that end coming
If it blocks
through.
Joe B. Jackson, what do you think's gonna do to our road? We got actually
We're
big
talking
trees on
about
our road.
the road on this development. So we'll answer all those at the end, all your
And
questions
like
at
they
the
said,
end.
you know, our road's
Keep
lined
going.
with ditches, so you can't widen the road. And what are you gonna do, take up more of our yard? You're gonna widen the road to take up the ditches and then dig ditches in our yard? Because it does, when it rains heavy, I get a pond in my side backyard. So then, if you get rid of those ditches, and then you're gonna have to tear down tons of trees in my front yard, because right behind the ditch is lined with trees. Who wants to, you gonna pay for my trees? You're gonna replant my trees? You know, that's all issues we have, we all have, because we all have nice trees. That's what we want. That's why I moved my family to that road about 3 years ago, because I'm tired of the city, tired of the traffic in the city. Y'all can't alleviate traffic in the city. And now you want to bring more traffic to our country road. That's why we moved out there. We didn't have to deal with those problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Who else? Okay, oh, barely right under the line, all right.
Indication, I apologize.
Okay.
My name's Matt Hicks. I live at 5605 Elam Road. I'll make it quick. So in TDOT's plan for 2040 for growth, there's actually an interchange plan for Elam Road. So putting an access road, this kind of seems kind of sketchy and scary to make sure if you're adding an interchange right there and that's an access road, that's more traffic that's going to come off of that access road from the interchange. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Don't see anybody else hopping up, so we will close the public hearing. We have a lot of things to discuss and cover, and I don't know if Mr. Blomley or Ms. Smith want to start out addressing some of these questions and some of the things that we talked about that maybe we didn't cover as much in the last hearing. I can start reading some lists of questions. I think in general, talking about, you know, widening a road, you know, where do we stand? Is there the interchange? But you know, I think one of the big things is going to be here is just this connection road. And I'm not sure, to be honest, we're going to answer that question tonight. I don't know.
And I'm just trying to decide, should I finish the one missing section of the plan book, which is materials, before we get into responding to answers? I'm thinking most people don't care about the materials. Maybe we'll save that for
answers to their
later
questions.
discussion.
And Ms. Smith, I would like to, if you don't mind, I would like to take the emergency services. You know, as I mentioned earlier, having multiple ways in and out of a development for emergency services is in our design guidelines, it's in our subdivision regulations. It's an issue that we've discussed many times. And one of the points that I tried to make during the neighborhood meeting on Monday was that, you know, there are two access points on the Joe B. Jackson Parkway. There is Richard Reeves Drive, which takes you out to the signalized intersection, and there's Treasure Drive, which is more of a local street that takes you out to the north as well. But once you get past the intersection of Richard Reeves and Treasure, there's one way in and out of this development. And so, for example, if at the entrance to this development here, if there is an accident, someone coming out of this development or turning in, and someone gets T-boned and blocks that Richard Reeves Drive, then our emergency service vehicles need a secondary way to get in and out, because then your outlet to Joe B. Jackson Parkway is eliminated if there's an accident there. So that's the point we were trying to make with regards to emergency services and the existing ingress egress out to Joe B. Jackson Parkway. As far as some of the traffic and connection issues, I'd like to invite Mr. Huddleston up. I think he could shed some light on those issues as well.
Good evening, Mr. Huddleston.
Good evening, Ms. Jones, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you. Just on behalf of city staff, when we began looking at this most recently, the idea and recommendation for us to look at a connection there was really city staff's. And so I know there's been a lot of discussion about the developer wanting to do that. And so to Mr. Swanson, his team's benefit, this was city staff led and city staff directed. And what I would say to us as we look at this tonight, we sense the struggle. Murfreesboro is a growing community. We've been very blessed, but we've also been very effective at industrial and job recruiting and blue collar jobs, and all that we do here are a very important part of our community. We see that. We also understand that the concepts and the concerns that were brought up by the neighbors are real. That doesn't change whether we have city annexed property or the county road. This road is still an important and a significant road in our community. In fact, it is so important that in our 2040 major transportation plan, we show improving that road because of one great feature, and that is that it crosses the interstate without an interchange. I think Ms. Knoll appropriately pointed out that Elam Road serves as that local road option. And I think the discussions we heard tonight, the complaints and the observations that the residents have made are true. That's how it's being used, to go from one side of the interstate to the other without going through that. So, we're making a long-term decision here tonight. The city has identified this as a road that's important to our community. We will invest significant monies on the opposite side of the interstate to see that roadway improved and rerouted, helping to eliminate some of the current concerns there. But we also know as we continue to grow as a community, this road will be important. It'll continue to see traffic, whether we make this connection tonight and whether we annex this road tonight or not. So our, really, and quite honestly, my thoughts were, when we saw this planned industrial development come through the first time in the mid-2000s, Elam Road wasn't on our radar screen. And if you recall, Ms. Jones, you were on the Planning Commission then. We made the decisions because of several factors not to connect Elam Road at this point. One was we didn't have the right amount of property. The annexation of this small tract remarkably gives us an opportunity to get a better connection to Elam Road than we would have been able to afford in the other one. But at the same time, I don't think the city's commitment to investment in this road network was there 15 years ago like it is today, and like you've already seen on our proposed improvements to Joe B. Jackson and Elam Road and the Joe B. Jackson interchange. So we know this road is going to continue to serve and be important. And I think for those reasons, we feel more comfortable with his roadway being in city control, and having that investment protected and preserved, because we're going to invest quite a bit in this in this roadway. I think the other thing that we benefit from here is if we continue to load up Joe B. Jackson, because we're not making alternate connections and we're not doing the things that our planning doctrine says, then Joe B. Jackson becomes an inefficient road for us. And so much so that we already know that at the interchange today, that interchange is failing a level of service questions for us. Now, it's been in for 20 years, so it's served, you know, a good 20 years, but there's going to be significant state and local reinvestment in that interchange to help protect and preserve that interchange capacity. But what we're saying is that if we continue to just load up Joe B. Jackson and don't develop some alternate routes, Joe B. Jackson fails to be the roadway it needs to be. And so we need to look at some alternate routes, and by providing this connection here for non-truck traffic only, then we do give this employment center an opportunity to be loaded and unloaded somewhat for the folks that are going to be heading this way anyway, without the opportunity to go up and add to Joe B. Jackson. We really just look for it to be a distribution of traffic in the neighborhood and in the area. And so I think those were the things we were looking for to be the benefits of this connection. And it is, again, just a very long-term decision for us. Mr. Swanson and his team and the development, they already are making significant investments out there, but we'll have an opportunity to help preserve that connectivity for our future road networks out there.
Can you just briefly, or you may or may not be able to discuss this, but do we know if the county had any current plans for any improvements to Elam Road? I mean, we already know it's just a road that needs some improvements, but so were there already some in the works anyway, or did they have that on their radar or not?
I'm not aware of anything, and I'm going to look at Matthew and see if he's aware of anything. I know we took this request to the road board.
For the annexation of the right-of-way?
Yes.
Yes, so the annexation of the right-of-way, a part of that is county-owned and a part of it's state-owned. We did our due diligence. We got a statement of no objection for the portion that's county right-of-way, which includes that service road that runs parallel to the interstate, as well as the area directly in front of the subject property. From the subject parcel that we're annexing all the way over to Manchester Pike is county right-of-way. We took that to the road board late last month, and they voted to grant their consent for us to annex it.
And I think my personal experience with their major road plan, and they have a similar document to what we have, but most of their improvements are safety improvements, which includes some curve alignment work and shoulder widening, and that's most of what I am aware of that they've used in the past. I would expect that the county's improvements on this road would most likely include some widening and some additional shoulder to help with the safety concerns or the safety of the roadway.
So with this, if we annex this, then does this, and if there are improvements made to Elam Road, there was questions regarding who pays for those. So in any way, does the county share in that, since it's improvements to a road that basically services county residents? So does the county also participate in the improvements of the road, or does the city provide, or the state?
If I had to speculate at this point, I quite suspect it would be city funded, city and or development funded. It is not a state road, although there have been occasions where the state has funded local roadways to help with managing traffic off of state routes. I'm not sure this will qualify. We've had a good partnership with the county on some other projects where they have shared in cost, but we have not approached the county about any shared cost or level of improvement to this roadway. I'm certainly not opposed to having that conversation. I think and certainly the neighbors could tell us about this and did somewhat tonight, but the roadway as you cross the interstate, it runs along the river. It's often closed due to flooding. There's a slab bridge that takes you into the county farm road, and I think I heard somebody refer to it as the one-man bridge. Where was that? One-man bridge, which crosses the railroad track. and all of that. And so we know that there are limitations on that existing road network there. Our major transportation plan actually would envision shifting that up out of the floodplain and help eliminate some of the poor curvature in there. But it does rely on this bridge connection over the interstate to help us manage that local traffic that would be so helpful, I think, to these neighbors and to others in our community to be able to move in and out of that area without going through the Joe B interchange.
One more quick thing before, I know there's a lot of other questions for you. There was the reference to the fact that we have this city road connecting part of the city over here and part of the city over here, and we have all these little tentacles going out connecting. And I don't know whether that's something you want to explain, or Mr. Blomley, or what, but this is something new for us. We wouldn't have done that in the past because we only annexed contiguously, and now we can annex like this. Yeah. Not that we want to, that's the way we now have to do according to the law, so.
Right, I think this is still a contiguous annexation because.
Contiguous, yes, but just a road connector.
And the road connection, because I think this is true again, Mr. Blomley, I don't know if you've got it on an exhibit that you could pull up, but the intersection of Manchester Highway and Elam Road is already within the city limits. And this development is in the city limits, and so we're already on each end of it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got that pulled up on the
with city limits.
Cable could put that up on the big screen.
So you see in the light gray shaded areas there, Elam Road and Manchester Highway, which is the entrance into the Whitworth Buchanan School. That cross street there is a private county school street, but that's the intersection there. And so we're connecting city to city there. I think it is a reasonable question about dispatch and dispatch confusion, and our certainly our dispatchers and our emergency service providers, whether it be city or county, are constantly working to improve our performance on that. Our computer-aided dispatch and our GIS system give us great tools for that today that we didn't have 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But I also know that when we create a boundary, we always have that boundary condition. And if we shift the boundary, we just shift the condition. And so here, we'll create that boundary, and we do understand that. Our emergency response and dispatchers are very well trained. They know their areas, they know their services, and they do a real good job in making sure that the calls get routed properly. From our fire department standpoint, I'll share this with you, and their policy is go. And if we're in the wrong territory, we'll sort that out later. But when we get a call for service that comes in to our fire department, they roll. They don't argue with the dispatcher. They don't say, well, I don't think that's in the city. It's none of that. We're gonna be en route, and we'll clean up any dispatching issues later. And I can tell you that the incident of dispatching issues has dropped tremendously because of some of the work we've had with GIS and computer-aided dispatch and some of the tools that the county and their folks have added. So.
Thank you, Mr. Helston. Mr. Wright?
I'll make a couple comments. I've actually driven this road a lot. I lived on the south side of Murfreesboro, and my wife taught at Whitworth for multiple years. And I could leave my house and go this route, and my wife could leave and go Joe B, and I could beat her every single time going all around this road. So I've got a lot of experience in it. I've also had somebody pop off that little road as I was going over the bridge, and just like that other gentleman said, I may have been going a little faster than the speed limit, but I'm real familiar with it. But something to think about with these emergency vehicles is if a fire truck or an emergency vehicle is in the Maples and gets a call to this development, if this access road is not on this south side, to get into this development, it has to go all the way down Manchester Pike, down Joby, and then back down the development to get there. So all the way in a big circle, where if it was in the Maples and this access road was here, they could pop in from the south side, and it would be a lot faster access. I'm sympathetic to the idea that, hey, cars going in and out could cause an accident, but the emergency vehicle access makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, it's definitely difficult when we live in the country and we don't want increased traffic in front of our houses. I mean, I live in the city and I don't like traffic in front of my house, but, you know, Joby Jackson is a hot spot for jobs and creation and manufacturing, and we've got a big industrial development here that's going to do that. It's going to create jobs and bring jobs to the area, and something that's important to me is making sure that we can provide emergency services to the people that are working there. So I agree with Sean. And it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like the city's requesting this, right? Is that correct? This access road?
Yeah, yes, Ms. Avewater, I can maybe jump in and help you with that. The ability to do an emergency connection is there in the planned industrial development today. That's already a condition of Mr. Swanson's zoning plan. Our ask my ask of our team and my ask of the Swanson team was to look at the benefit of the city annexing the Elam Road right-of-way and the developer providing a limited use connection for all of those other things that we've talked about. So it was, and I did want to say that about Mr. Swanson. I think he felt like maybe he was taking a little bit of the heat that maybe should have been directed to the city, but this was our recommendation. This was my recommendation for our staff to look at it and evaluate the merits and bring it to this stage. So we did ask him to do that. He didn't ask to do it, but when we talked to him, he said, yes, I think with my current development plan, I can accomplish that and see the benefits that it would provide to my development and also to the community.
Thank you, Greg.
I say something. I know the public is new. How can they talk and we can't review anything? That makes no sense. We just have to sit here, right?
Yes.
You want a road, but you don't want the people to live on it. That's what we understand. Y'all have a good night. It's ridiculous.
Who else?
I guess for me, I mean, I grew up in the country, so I get it. I grew up, and I mean, this is not rural compared to where I grew up in West Tennessee. I get it, but I also get it from the standpoint of emergency services because where I grew up in the country, we had a railroad track that blocked both sides of both exits to get out of our area. And when a train comes by, it blocks everything. No emergency services can get in. So if somebody has a heart attack, we're in deep trouble. And we tried to get an access road going out of the back of it for years, and we still haven't gotten it. So I would tell you, for me, having emergency services, it might not seem like a lot, but it is a big thing. For me, that makes the difference. The only thing I would ask the staff to do is really consider when you come out of this place, the danger of turning right and making sure that we have the roadway designed where you can really have good sight lines. And if there is a possibility inside the development that you can force the trucks to go the other way by designing the outlet to make them go the other way towards Joby Jackson as opposed to being able to go towards this exit, we should do everything we can to do that, to make sure the routing routes them that way. So that if you come out of this exit, it is only passenger traffic. Because I do think if we leave the roadway as it is, you are going to create a hazard with trucks.
Yeah, I agree.
The only other thing I would probably ask is does the right-of-way that we're annexing give us enough to add that 2040 plan? Or are we going to add, or we have to add that later?
Yeah, so in most cases, the existing county right-of-way is not adequate for a three-lane commercial section roadway.
Okay.
And certainly, and I would even suggest to say that this is probably presumptive right-of-way that was never dedicated as part of a subdivision plat process. So there's a lot of things we would have to evaluate on upgrading that roadway.
And I guess we would have to do that with the 2040 plan anyway, correct?
Yes, correct, yes. That would be a normal part of our,
okay.
and not unlike projects that we have going under construction today with Brinkley Road, which was a two-lane county road, and Rucker Lane that we just completed, and several years ago with Halls Hill Pike, and some of the other projects we completed where we upgraded an existing two-lane county road to Florence Road was another one, Manson Pike. All of those were existing two-lane county roads, ditch section, generally what you would call a rural road, and so we were able to work through the process and upgrade that.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that I understand this. As it sits right now, the emergency access, there are emergency access already on this side.
Yes, sir. On the south side, there's one. It's in a different location, if I'm not mistaken.
So staff is only asking for the limited use road really being put in this area. That's the whole purpose. Okay, I got it.
Mr. Blum, could you just briefly touch on, and this would only come into play, I think, when we're talking about if this road is ever improved and we have ditches and we have flooding, just in general when improvements are made to roadways and how flooding is handled, because that was one of the other questions we haven't addressed was worsening the flooding on the properties.
I think I might ask Mr. Huddleston to.
Mr. Huddleston, sorry, I was trying to give you a break.
Appreciate that considerations, Ms. Jones. Well, certainly the city's ability to look at drainage when we're looking at a roadway project is there, and quite often we do and should look at opportunities to upgrade the drainage system with projects, with the road projects. I'm not as comfortable with all of the drainage patterns here, but would just suggest to this group that any look at the roadway improvements on Elam Road would also look at any potential benefit to make that a larger project to maybe improve the drainage system. I think a lot of the properties through there are a little bit lower than Elam, and that's my recollection, and so it may be hard for us to do anything in Elam that would help provide, more broad drainage relief into some of the other properties.
But are you going to worsen the flooding that is already there?
No,
onto these properties?
Yeah, we would provide adequate routes for any public road drainage, and then any water that's coming onto or off of the roadway, make sure that has a protected place to go, so that it doesn't cause the impact.
Thank you, Mr. Huddleston. We did have some questions regarding some of the allowable uses, and I think that was a big part of the amendment tonight. And specifically, lumberyard was mentioned. Not sure if there was any other particular concerns for any of the changes in the allowable uses. I realized they were adding some of the newly created uses that we have now in our zoning plan, so I thought that was a good thing.
So the table that I've got up from the presentation that was provided this evening, and we tried to make it, actually, we improved the visibility here. In your book, you'll notice there are red X's in each of the columns that particular use is proposed to be added to. So as an example, brewery artisan was not a previous use because we're just now adding that to our zoning ordinance. So any uses that changed what the title actually was has any red text attached to it. So brewery artisan is really those smaller microbreweries that might be attached to a restaurant, those kinds of things that might make sense. They're generally all interior. So we looked at that. Some of the other ones, like pet shops that were already allowed in a district, when they talked about adding it to Region 2, we said that they needed to explicitly state it excludes overnight kenneling. We didn't want the noise of dogs and animals potentially affecting the adjacent neighbors. So you'll notice that red text has been added, so it actually impacts Region 1 as well as Region 2 in that particular case. Going to the contractor's yard that was brought up earlier, they did want to have it in Region 2 and Region 4. The city actually said, no, Region 4 does not make sense for us. It's an outdoor use predominantly, lots of noise that'll negatively affect the neighbors. So you'll notice there is no red X in that Region 4, but in Region 2, there's an X with an asterisk that says it would only be allowed on the opposite side of Richard Reeves, further away from the residents. They did ask about lumber yards. That was one of the uses that you won't see highlighted here because the city did not agree with adding that to any of the districts, just leaving it as is in the current districts. Fabricated metal products, we thought that's a use that if you're doing a lot of fabrication, let's say AC vents, they're usually longer pieces of material that would generally be outdoors. We wanted to specify it would only be allowed indoors, so that actually affected all three of the zones that it shows here. Paints, same way, only storage and distribution. We didn't want a paint manufacturer, which may have noxious uses, so we use these opportunities to clean up some of the existing uses. Primary metal distribution, again, indoors. And then transportation equipment, we wanted to clarify that vehicles was included in that current Zone 3. And then the last one is the pump station. It was not previously listed, but it is in our current Chart 1, and it's basically allowed in all districts throughout the entire city. So it didn't make sense to not have it in this particular district, so we did ask for them to add those. So that's kind of a summary of the changes of those uses, and what the staff did is we looked at the prior Planning Commission discussions way back in 2008 and what the intents were, and really the intents were keep noisy uses away from neighborhoods, keep building heights to your lower height standards, and really don't have noxious uses. And if you have anything, having that buffer all the way down the entirety of the property site continues to be in place. So that summarizes the changes that are proposed for the allowable uses. I'm trying to think of other outstanding questions that we still have not answered.
Read all my notes anymore, but I think I've checked off most of the questions I had written down. Any other questions, comments from the Planning Commission?
Not for me.
And I wasn't sure on that last comment, and I don't know if Mr. Huddleston maybe has the answer. Talked about TDOT plans for an interchange at Elam and I-24. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that.
can't speak to absolute certainty on that issue, but I know that our major transportation plan would have incorporated any state plans in with that 2040 plan. I know there were improvements slated at the Epps Mill Buchanan interchange as well as at the Joe B. Jackson. So it seems unlikely that they would plan for an interchange at Elam Road. But I don't know that for sure there are plans or not plans for that right now. But it's probably not likely, seeing as we did not incorporate it into our 2040 transportation plan.
So it is not in the 2040 plan?
It is not in the 2040 plan, correct.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Noah.
What about the possibility of, I think it's been mentioned several times, of having a gate for just emergency vehicles and no through traffic for passenger vehicles on the road?
And really, until such time that we
Can improve the road.
The whole, I mean, the goal would be to allow it, but if we allow that much traffic on the road, on a subpar road, would that make sense? So, I mean, help me understand that. Unless we don't understand that it's not, my concern is that we're gonna overload the road in the existing condition.
Right. So, and I think, good question, good discussion. The road's being used today. It's going to continue to be used. And I think the opportunity, the amount of traffic that would be added to this part from this development would be fairly minor as a limited use roadway anyway. And I think that our developer is constructing now and will be constructing soon these improvements. And so when we physically make that change, and do we make it in the zoning, there's a lot of logistics to that. And I'd love sometime to drive you around town and show you where that's been done and never undone, even though the roadway networks around it have significantly increased. It is a long-term decision, and I understand the struggle. I think, you know, what staff's asking you to look at is the overall transportation benefit of helping manage and distribute some of our traffic. We know it's going to impact these folks. They've already told us that the roadway is impacting their lives today. We know that. I would say, and not the city's going to be the roadway savior or anything, but we have a more aggressive road improvement plan than our friends do in the county, and that's just the reality. We're the road builders here. This road doesn't have a chance without the city doing something on it anytime soon, and I'm just talking honest to you. So if there's not the benefit of this roadway connection to help manage the impacts back onto Joe B. Jackson and Manchester Highway and the interstate interchange, then there's not a real city benefit here. I understand the emergency services, that's in place today, but there's not a real city benefit for us annexing and taking on this roadway. I think today is the time for the decision on it, and I would encourage you to strongly consider allowing that connection to be made as a limited use connection. I think we probably don't get this opportunity to come back and revisit this in our careers here.
Good.
Special.
Motion to approve with all staff comments.
No second.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve and a second with all staff comments, subject to all staff comments. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Got it? Okay. So this will still go to the city council, and they will have public hearings at the city council. And that's usually going to be at least a month or 6 weeks out.
Probably about a month and a half or so.
Yeah.
Okay. So you will have the opportunity to go again and speak to the council level. So, okay. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. Thank you all. All right, we still have staff reports and other business. Any staff reports and other business?
I have nothing, and Mr. Ives isn't here tonight, so.
Gosh,
Yeah,
okay.
keep quiet over there.
All right, then we stand adjourned.
All right.
Download Murfreesboro City TV for Apple TV and start watching today. City TV is now on Amazon Fire TV, and it's easy to watch. Search Murfreesboro City TV in your Fire TV app store to download the free app. Or you can log into your Amazon account and download it from there.